November 2nd, 2021, confirming member access. As a preliminary matter, I am Brian Colleran, Chair of the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ben Gahagan.
Yes.
Dan Streeter. Dan.
Yes.
Frank Wettenkamp.
Yes.
Mary Rimmer, who's still not on, and Peter Pecos.
Good evening.
Good evening, Peter. Town staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Samantha Holt.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. This November 2nd, 2021 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until April 1st, 2022. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Before we turn to the topics of the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as chair, will introduce each item on the agenda. For all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer or your phone when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions at the end of the meeting and at the end of each item. After commission discussion, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. Samantha will seek questions and comments through the Zoom raise hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, please click on the participants button. The list of participants will open to display on the right. At the bottom of the participant area, you will see an option to click on a raise hand button. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on your participant list. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they're listed, which is determined by the order in which people click on the function. Each participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address, then ask a question to make the comment. Please note that the chat feature is not part of the official record and should not be utilized during the meeting. Anyone wishing to address the commission must do so through their video or audio connection. The chat feature is intended only for the use of the commission and its agent and only for the purpose of communicating with individuals in the event of a disruption. Please also note that everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner they would at an in-person meeting. Any disruptions will result in removal to the waiting room where you will receive a direct chat message from Samantha. Once acknowledged, Samantha will readmit you to the meeting. Any further disruptions will result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay, now the agenda. So to start us off this evening, we have the next regularly scheduled meeting is November the 16th, and we have a suite of minutes that we can get to. I believe, Samantha, you said September 7th was not ready, but otherwise you have June 22nd, July 13th, August 3rd, October 5th, and October 19th available.
And October 25th. I don't know if you guys can vote on that if it's not listed, but it is done.
Okay. Did anybody get a chance to look at any of these minutes and review them and offer any feedback? Yeah, Frank, did you just wave your hand?
I reviewed them, but I don't have any comments.
That's good. That's good.
Same as Frank.
All right. Well,
Motion
to
to
me,
accept.
that's enough. Excellent. We have a first. Anybody want a second, Peter?
Second.
Excellent. Thank you. First and second. All right. Roll call. Benjamin,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Frank. I think you said yes, Frank.
Yes, I did.
He might be kind of far from the mic. I'm not sure. Peter.
Yes.
All right. And I will also vote in the affirmative. Okay. That's good to get that out of the way. So for our first public hearing on the agenda, we have Chris Connolly.
Can I actually,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
one question. Ben Osgood with Cricket Lane has to leave by 8:15. He needs to be out of here by 8:15. Can we bump Cricket Lane up to the first spot just to make sure that we get that done and out of the way?
I'd also add that the Connolly filing does not have a DEP number. I just looked, so it's
Right.
still unsigned.
Right. Yeah. All right, let's do it. Sorry, Chris. So first thing on our agenda, Cricket Lane LLC, 55 Pearson Drive, DEP number 050-1355. This is a continued NOI to construct 24 single-family homes with 800 feet of roadway, common septic system, water line, sewer line, and stormwater management system. Roadway includes limited crossing, wetland filling, and replacement with work in the buffer zone. This is continued from our last meeting on October the 19th. All right, let's see. Let's start with Sam. Do you want to update the room on your end before we sort of go from there?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me if I could, I just have a procedural question.
Who
this
is
is
this?
Attorney Doug Duchesne for Cricket Lane.
Okay.
I noticed that you have one member missing tonight. I do also know that over the course of our hearings, various members have missed meetings. And I'm just wondering if we have an understanding of what we have in terms of voting members here this evening.
Yes, I mean, the 4 people that can vote on this are here: Peter, Daniel, Ben, and myself. Mary is staying out of it, and Frank came on after it started.
Okay, so we have 4 voting members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me for interrupting.
All right, thank you. Sam, what do you got for an update for the room and for the commission and,
I'm sorry, guys, hold on one second. I'm trying to help one of the applicants get into the meeting.
Okay.
Well, recused for this, Mary did just join in, so.
Hey, Mary, we took Cricket Lane one early, so somebody had a time constraint.
Great. All right. Thank you for letting me know. I'll check back with.
Is Ann on this call yet?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Oh, all right, great.
I'm
well
ready.
Then, I don't know what Sam's up to, but Ann, I was basically expecting Sam to introduce you at some point. So maybe do you want to take the lead on what you've got from your end, and then when Sam's ready, we can have her chime back in.
Okay. So Sam sent me a list of questions from the commission members. And I sent back some short, brief, kind of concise answers. I'm assuming that those were distributed to the members.
They were.
I don't know how you'd like to go over this. I don't know if the members would like to ask questions. I'm intending to kind of like follow your lead as to what it is that you're looking for from me. I can tell you that from the context of some of your questions, I may need to ask, as we go through this, ask the applicant to share information with me, or you may actually have information available to you that I don't have, that has been shared with you since the Conservation Commission that I haven't participated in, but I'm here to help you as best I can. And if there's answers I don't have yet, I will do my best to find them or answer them here if I can.
That's beautiful. Hey, Ann, can you just do me one favor? Do you mind introducing yourself for the record?
Yes, my name is Ann Martin. I'm the Director of Ecological Services and the owner of LEC Environmental Consultants,
Beautiful, thank you.
Massachusetts office.
Great. And then, Ann, in the same vein, what role are you, what seat are you sitting in tonight?
I am a peer review consultant to the Conservation Commission. And I provided
Beautiful.
peer review for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Great, thank you. All right, well then let's take that idea of Ann's. Let's just sort of pop over to questions. Daniel, Ben, Peter, and Frank, obviously you can ask, even though you can't vote. Is there anything on your mind that you would like to talk to Ann about regarding some of the fine print and some of these finer points of the WPA? Let's go around alphabetically. Ben, I know you sent some questions and you got
Yeah,
some
I'm
answers.
wondering, Brian, would it be useful if I can, it looks like I can share my screen. I'm guessing Ann might not be able to, but I have the questions and Ann's responses up on one of my monitors, so I could share that. If you
Beautiful. Yeah,
All right.
that would be good.
All right, let me get these things up. Hopefully everybody can see these.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Great. So now I'm not going to be looking at the camera because I'm going to be looking at my other screen. I like all of you and I'm paying attention to you, but I'm going to look the other way. I would appreciate it, Ann, if you could expand on your response to my second question, which is there any technical reason that the wetland replacement could not occur to the south of Wetland D, thereby removing the need for crossing the existing wetland to pursue mitigation activities? Your response was, it was my professional opinion that with only minor temporary access impacts, the area north of Wetland D was a better location for wetland replication than constructing it immediately abutting the roadway or retaining wall. So if you could expand on that, why that was.
Sure. So I think earlier renditions, wow, this is going back in history. Earlier renditions showed wetland replication behind, and this might require a plan, behind the existing dwelling on the property. If you enter where they have their entrance on the left, there is a house there, and there, I believe all of it or a portion of the wetland replication was either behind that house or adjacent to the roadway or the developed portion of the project. And looking at the way they had it designed, at least behind the house, where it was very steep slopes directly behind a residence, which the distance from the residence would be reduced. And looking at the grading and the topo on the plans on the other side of the wetland, it seemed like it would be easy to achieve with less grading or tree removal. And I actually excerpted some pictures that I had found that in response to when we had discussed this before the zoning board, Ben Osgood had actually taken some pictures within the footprint of the access, because the first time they proposed the alternative location that I'd asked for, they showed a footprint for where the access, and we asked them to take a look at it and see whether or not it would require tree removal. And they actually slightly revised the footprint such that it does not require any removal of trees. And I believe it only requires one shrub to be removed. And I meant to send that excerpted photos to Samantha today, but I don't think I did it. But I can make those available to you guys and you can see what it looked like. But it just, to me, it was a much better place to put a wetland replication area than where they were proposing it, and they were amenable to that.
Sure. Thank you. I think that regarding number 3 here, which I submitted, I guess would it be fair to say a summary of that response is that the commission has discretion to determine whether or not the project as designed would create an impact on a WPA recognized resource?
Yes, you always have that discretion.
Okay.
And I think part of what's before you is be and not impact the wetland. And that's, I think the question that's before you is whether or not the toe of the slope where they have it now for those basins or those areas that are close to the wetland is too close, and whether or not replanting of the buffer along there where it was disturbed is sufficient to offset any potential impacts, whether there's additional mitigation or whether they need to make changes to the plan.
And then, so some of your comments were, in my reading of them, were if you were involved with this project, you would heavily consider leaving more so it was not an issue.
I would typically provide no less than 10 to 15 foot setback or offset from a BVW from the toe of a slope, and would also provide planting mitigation like I encourage them to do to further ensure that there would not be an impact.
I think that's probably it for me for now, Brian. If you want to go to any other commission members, and they can just instruct me on how they want me to scroll around this document.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Dan, let's go to you. You had a few questions as well.
Yeah, I think that, Ben and I had some similar questions. It's become more clear to me. Thank you, Anne, for, I don't think I was quite understanding of the fact that the vernal pool habitat only extends to the boundary of the resource area. But I wonder if you could just comment on how you might interpret the idea that let's just, for instance, just say the retaining wall may have some impact on the wildlife habitat function of the resource area. Again, thinking of buffers and, in an area we do have jurisdiction based upon the BVW.
So are you talking about setbacks or a retaining wall to the certified vernal pool? Oh,
Yes,
so
yes, that area that you provided the, correct.
So, if you believe, trying to figure out how to say this. So you don't have a local bylaw. So what the setback is, other than, well, let me back up. So there's a line shown on that plan that is in light blue, and that is the 100-foot setback to the vernal pool. And that is partially on the plan because the Title V septic system cannot be within 100 feet of the vernal pool, which was something we addressed at the zoning board level. And stormwater BMPs cannot be within 100 feet of the vernal pool. That's just straight regs, stormwater, etc. So what's left is the buffer zone. And the jurisdiction that you have over the buffer zone is to control work to ensure that the work in the buffer zone does not result in an impact to the resource. So the resource we're looking at right now that you would be considering is the work that's in the buffer zone there. Would that work result in a direct impact to the certified vernal pool or the BVW? Like that's the question that you would be asking yourself or answering in reviewing that section of this project. Does that help you?
Well, sort of, it just sort of kicks the ball into our park, that's all. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I understand the actual, there's no buffer to the vernal pool, but we do have some interest in trying to understand what the impacts are to the, basically the BVW part of it. We have had other applications that we've worked on recently where we were focused on, you know, buffer zone impacts, specifically a retaining wall, and you know, we did try to maintain a pretty substantial buffer there. So it's our call, I guess.
And this is, I know one of your questions was about, I think it was one of yours. I didn't really track them by, yeah, I guess it was one of your questions was about, was there anything else that could be done? Which is why I provided that plan that said, that's shown in green on that plan, or even the area in blue that is beyond the buffer zone. You could ask them, or the applicant could offer restoration of that zone at the base of the wall or all along the base of that slope to further enhance or benefit the buffer zone once that project was constructed, if that would give you a higher level of assurance.
All right, and I think I had another question there, Ben, down a little bit further, perhaps.
Dan, can I ask one question related
Yeah,
to what you just
please,
asked? And answer
please do.
And at the very beginning of all that, you managed the stormwater guidance on and not having any stormwater infrastructure within 100 feet of a vernal pool, right? And that is regardless of the resource area delineation.
Yes, stormwater BMP's standard 6, I think it is. I don't actually have I brought my regs home with me, but I did not bring. The standard 6 says that BMPs should be set back 100 feet from the vernal pool. That would be infiltration, that would be catch basins, those kinds of things.
So
Stormwater basins, any of that.
So this retaining wall that's for stormwater purposes and is directing water down here does not apply?
I was not under the understanding that the purpose of the retaining wall was for stormwater or was to direct stormwater.
I think that's what, in our understanding of what's been described, that's what these arrows are about, is directing stormwater to infiltration areas.
Typically, I have understood this to be like stormwater drainage swales, this directing water to catch basins, sheet flow across the back of a yard. I don't know that the department interprets that as stormwater or drainage. I could certainly reach out and ask them. I've talked to the department over the years a fair number of times about this subject matter because it has come up on either my projects or other projects that I've peer reviewed. Perhaps that.
Yeah, I think this is a swale technically.
Closer.
I guess my understanding was that this is directing it down. You can see these arrows continue through this graded area, which I think would technically, if they're grading it to direct stormwater, would be a swale. So I guess that's some of my confusion about this, is that this is all this seems to be related to stormwater and conveyance and swales, but it's within the 100-foot, that 100-foot area under the BMPs that wouldn't allow anything.
Right.
So that's one of the areas I've been looking for clarification on.
And I can seek some clarification for you. I want to take a closer look at that. I don't remember that being part of it, but it's been well over a year since I looked at this. That could have been something that was overlooked or misinterpreted. I can certainly check into that for you, though.
All right, and then Brian, you can decide. Ben Osgood has his hand up, whether you want to call on Ben or let Dan go to his next question.
Yeah, let's let Dan finish, and then Ben, we'll let you sort of deal with it all at the end, rather than sort of piecemealing and potentially answering the same question more than once.
Yeah, just quickly on that number 4, my concern there was just that the replication area might run out of room. That, we were told a 3-to-1 slope on the backside, but it's pushed in there pretty tightly. And, I just sort of wondered if your interpretation of the plan was that was kind of standard issue, shouldn't be a problem, looked above board in all ways.
I don't think it should be a problem, but I want to be careful to discourage the board from fully exploring your concerns. I don't want to be perceived at all as writing off your concerns with any of my answers. So if you have a concern about that and you want them to look a little more closely at the layout, or if they could change the design, that you certainly can do that. That slope should be able to be seated and to be stable. But I don't want to just be dismissive of your concerns. And I don't know whether or not the applicant has been able to respond to any of these as well in some way that they could accommodate concerns expressed by the commission.
That concludes my questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dan. Peter, I didn't see your name on the question list, but is there anything on your mind?
Yes, there's always things on my mind. That's the scary part. First off, Ann, thank you very much for helping us and helping this commission tonight with your insight and expertise. My questions are going to be, I think, maybe a little bit more concerning with regards to vernal pool and appreciating. We have a certified vernal pool. We have a question as to whether there is a secondary pool. There's been kind of a back and forth, and help me to understand what the commission's role and responsibility is if there is a potential pool that hasn't been certified, or if there's a concern of one. Just kind of help me with this process, please.
So I'm going to take you back to the beginning of this process for me. This process started with the certified vernal pool was already certified. The data was collected in the PVP. I believe the data was actually collected by Mary Rimmer. And it was a different applicant than the current applicant that's before you with this application. It had a different name, which I cannot remember off the top of my head. And I pressed that applicant very hard to submit the data. If it's a vernal pool, I was pressing them to get it certified so that when the project left the zoning board and came before the Conservation Commission, that it would be certified, because the protection of vernal pools, it needs to be certified. And the applicant ended up agreeing that they would treat the vernal pool as if it was certified. And they set units back, retaining walls back, moved stormwater back, etc. That project did not proceed forward and make it out of the zoning board process. New developer comes along. New developer did not choose to honor that the prior agreement or prior understanding. And my understanding is that when we were before this, they were before the zoning board before when I was reviewing it, my understanding was that the data that Mary gathered was presented to Natural Heritage, and that Natural Heritage rejected the data. And I know this is one of the questions that someone had asked me was about what my experience was in Natural Heritage rejecting data. And my understanding is, although I have not seen this in writing, is that Natural Heritage looked at aerial imagery for the area in the pool and did not believe that it maintained proper hydrology through the spring hydro period for any vernal pool species that might be laying egg masses or breeding in there for the species to complete their life cycle. And so they were hesitant, or my understanding is that's the reason why they denied certification of the vernal pool, because they want to make sure that they are certifying pools that fully meet the criteria. And one of the criteria is holding water for at least 60 days. But separate from some, a fine pointed, did it hold water for 59 days or was it 61 days? The point with that is that it needs to be able to fully function as a vernal pool and provide the habitat criteria. So it sits as a potential vernal pool or an uncertified vernal pool. And so that places the commission under the Wetlands Protection Act in kind of an awkward position, because the Wetland Protection Act speaks to vernal pool protection when the vernal pool has been certified. So this PVP is in ILSF, and a certified vernal pool in ILSF would be protected. I'm not sure where that places you in an awkward position when the Wetlands Protection Act is written the way it is.
Thank you, Ann. I had a hard time, and I don't know, Sam, if it's possible to pop up that email that we received, and the verbiage that was selected did not say that it was not certified. Sam, can you pull up that email just so that language can be read, because the words were chosen carefully, and I brought that up at a meeting saying it's not saying that it's not, it's saying that it doesn't have enough information not to say it's not.
Give me 1 second, I can bring that up.
Yeah,
I'd also,
Pete,
Yes.
oh, go ahead, Ben.
oh, I was just gonna say that I wanted to chime in to this with Ann on how the ANRAD plays in.
Yeah, I was about to do the same thing.
And
So
I'm prepared to share that. I'm prepared to share that screen after Sam brings up this stuff.
So the email that I have from him states we have reviewed a couple of applications to certify the ILSF as a vernal pool habitat since 2017, 2018. From the beginning, we have requested that the observers to different parties provide additional information about the wetlands hydro period, as there have been conflicting data about whether the ILSF sustains a viable vernal pool environment during the amphibian breeding season. Unfortunately, based on the available data, we have not been able to conclude or presume with confidence that the ILSF has an adequate hydro period, at least in most years. In administering its vernal pool certification program, the NHESP strives to ensure that vernal pools that become certified do indeed provide habitat function consistent with the definition and discussions of vernal pool habitat in the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act regulations. In the case of the ILSF at 55 Pearson Drive, we are open to reviewing additional data in consideration of a possible certification. At this time, however, there's too much uncertainty about the wetlands hydro period and therefore its habitat function to approve a certification.
Mr. Chairman, what was the date of that letter or memo?
This was received August 25th.
2021?
Yes, sorry.
So I have not,
Sam,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say this might be a good time to bring up and share the screen like Ben was talking about, because to Ann's points and to Peter's question, bringing up the ORAD at this point might make some of the questions simpler to answer.
Ben, do you have the,
Yep.
thanks.
You're welcome, Sam. Teamwork.
Yeah, so the ORAD that we have, so this was approved, I believe it was issued in August of 2019. And I believe this one, Walter Erickson was actually listed as the applicant for this. So this is the ORAD that was issued for that. And it does note that as a vernal pool. So the one that we're looking at is that, the one that's in question, and it's kind of listed as a little bit of both. So it shows the limit of the vernal pool and the ILSF area. So the solid line that you see, I believe, is the vernal pool limit, and then the dashed line sort of outside of and alongside of it is the ILSF boundary.
I think it's the opposite, Sam. When you read this note here, it says isolated, which is pointing.
Oh, it is. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe it's the opposite, where the dashed line would be the vernal pool and the isolated land subject to ILSF is within the vernal pool.
Yes, I'm sorry. I believe you are correct.
Yeah. So the solid line is the ILSF and the dashed line is the vernal pool that these plans refer to. So I am interested to hear Anne's reaction to the email you read as well as this.
And if you could throw into the mix, what is the difference between an ORAD vernal pool and a certified vernal pool in the WPA and the regs and blah, 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 all the rest of it?
Can you move the plan? There's an error. There's a leader pointing to, I wanted to see what that leader pointing to the vernal pool on the back of the Doobie property said.
It says limit of off-site vernal pool isolated land subject to flooding 1,495 surface, square feet at a depth of 12 inches. So this is just pointing to the off-site portion of it, which goes into this property's backyard.
So, well, as you can tell, we're in the land of ambiguity, right? Because the Wetlands Protection Act talks about protection of certified vernal pools. They filed an ANRAD for a plan that shows a vernal pool. It doesn't say that it's certified. Whether or not it's certified, we know that at least is for the depth of my understanding right now, that the vernal pool is not certified. I mean, it's interesting, I think, that we are having this discussion. I think it's interesting that additional data has been submitted over time by individuals attempting to certify the vernal pool, whether it's satisfied natural heritage or not. And it's still unclear to me what it is that they're still looking for to certify this. But this whole discussion is part of the reason why I tried to encourage the applicant to just go ahead and treat it like a vernal pool or a certified vernal pool and design your project and walk away, because it gets complicated in these situations. If the pool became certified, I would definitely say that you approved the boundary of a vernal pool at this location. It's shown on the plan. Does approving the boundary in an ORAD say that it's a certified vernal pool? Not necessarily. And I don't know that there's anything in the ORAD that tied the developer down to treating it as if it was a certified vernal pool in any of the language of the ORAD. So we're in a little bit of a land of ambiguity, other than that the Wetlands Protection Act relies upon natural heritage to guide the department and conservation commissions in the direction they should go under the Wetlands Protection Act for protection of vernal pools, and says certified. I can tell you that I've had the discussion with the department before on the subject matter of what happens if the application is filed and it's just a vernal pool and it gets certified some way along the way. And as the commission may or may not be aware, if this project was appealed, that review before the department would be called de novo, which means it's not based on the record that was before you, but it starts all over. And if the pool was certified during this process, they would my understanding and my experience has been that they would acknowledge that. The further you go in the process, the more complicated that gets. I mean, in many ways, I think it would be in the applicant's best interest to seek to resolve this. I don't see it as a matter that's going to disappear.
And
I don't, yes.
Ben, can you pull up the actual ORAD, the issued ORAD?
Yeah, no problem. I was actually looking at it just this moment. 1 second. Nobody judge me for using Amazon. The ORAD is
So
Very.
it does note vernal pools as a plural. I mean, does that have any standing where it does? I mean, again, it's almost like an ambiguous note that it's vernal pool /S. So it's not like there are definitely 2 vernal pools here, but it does kind of note that there are multiple.
So yes, I mean, in reality, in the field, the boundaries of 2 vernal pools were established, agreed to, and shown on the plan. The only difference is that Natural Heritage has accepted the data for one of the vernal pools as sufficient for certification. They have not yet rendered, as you read in that email, which puts a little more flesh on it for me, they have not yet received sufficient information to certify the second pool. I mean, if you forward me that information, or if you can put in my hands, I don't know what data was submitted to them. I don't know if it was submitted through let me get the vernal pool online system, or it was mailed to them. So I haven't seen any of this data. Today is the first time I've heard about this email. I can certainly take a look at it. We can reach out to Natural Heritage and say, can you explain in greater detail what it is that you're specifically looking for? I don't know if that data is out there, but not in their hands, to add clarity to this.
Okay. So then finally, Frank, Peter, you good?
I am for now. Thanks very much, Ben. All right. It happens.
Frank, do you want to chime in at some point here? Do you want to ask anything? Are you following along well enough? Anything you need to check in about?
You know, I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on, and my question is this: has the applicant expressed why they aren't willing to shrink the size of this? Is it for trying to make it work financially, that they can't reduce the size or the footprint of this to make it fit within the buffer zone of the vernal pool and eliminate the need to cross a resource area to get into the development? I mean, it seems like there are some issues here, notwithstanding the second vernal pool, that make this project difficult to pass.
Hey, Frank.
And I'm
Frank, let me interrupt you a
wondering
second.
why the applicant isn't willing to make changes, or if they are, maybe they are, and I don't know if they've been asked. So anyway, that's my comment.
Yeah, Frank, I was gonna say you should turn your video off because I don't know if anybody understood what just happened. Your bandwidth was terrible.
I think the gist was basically, what is there any flexibility on the applicant's part to change the footprint of the project And if so, why not? Because it seems like there are consistent concerns across the commission. I think that's what he was going for. He can put his video on and give it a yay or nay on my summary.
Right. Frank, did that sound about right? Is that a good summary?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. So then, let's save that. We'll give Ben a second to step in. It sounds like it's more of a question for Ben than for Ann, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
All right, Frank, I think we need to cut you off. Maybe you could text with Sam on the side and see if there's any ways to sort of like maybe type your questions to her, and she can repeat them back for you, because yeah, your connection's rough.
And
So
type
then-
into the, you can type into the chat and Sam can read them
Yeah.
into the record. But maybe you want to go to Ben while that's happening, Brian.
Yeah, I think, Frank, well, why don't you type in your questions and give them to Sam, and I'll just, I'll ask a question or two in the meantime, and then we can turn back to your typing. So
Sam,
then,
are you able to hear me better now?
No, it's very broken up.
so Anne, can we talk about so vernal pools and their relation to wildlife habitat? You know, a lot of the stuff that's in the WPA talks about vernal pools as wildlife habitat, and you know, the presumption of protection, you know, is in place there. Do you want to talk to that a little bit? And just sort of, you know, I think your answer, if I ask anything more specific, will simply be, you know, things you said 2 or 3 times already tonight. But just for the sake of sort of educating the commission on how vernal pools are interpreted in the WPA, that seems like something you can actually answer. That won't be waiting until the next meeting or waiting until more information.
So are you asking about like vernal pool habitat is the vernal pool itself in an area extending 100 feet as long as that area is within another wetland resource area. So that would be if it was in a BVW, riverfront, floodplain, ILSF. And so
Right.
anything else is buffer zone. So for instance, if the crossing, the access to this site, which is impacting historically filled wetlands and the footprint of a wetland, if that was within 100, if that wetland, direct wetland impact was within 100 feet, that would be an impact to vernal pool habitat and would require vernal pool habitat evaluation in accordance with 1060. That's not what's happening here, but that would be an example of that. And so you're looking at, other than the footprint of the impacts for the access crossing, you're looking at a project that's occurring in the buffer zone. Is it meeting all the, some of the setback requirements we talked about before to the certified vernal pool? And is the work in the buffer zone of the nature that it will cause an impact to the wetland? Now, the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that it won't. So you can certainly articulate or ask questions of them or ask them to provide additional information to demonstrate why it will not impact the wetland, the work in the buffer zone. And these are, there's a section, which I don't know if I have it up, where it talks about temperature, water, changes in water temperature, sunlight, et cetera, all the different ways that work in a buffer zone could potentially impact a BVW, that the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that the project is not going to do any of those things that's going to impact the wetland. But it's not a maybe will it, it's a, you're a determination that the project is so close that it will, or that the project is doing something about it, that it will impact the wetland or the vernal pool habitat, and that the project has or has not addressed that type of impact. So to your sufficient satisfaction to either issue a permit or ask them to revise the layout in some way so that it doesn't result in an impact.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was good. It was, a nice broad brush. It was perfect. Sam, did Frank get his questions in?
He did, but can I maybe make the suggestion? I know Ben Osgood has to leave at 8:15, and he's had his hand up for quite a while. Do we want to maybe let him take a second to?
The clock. Yeah, it's 7:55.
Yeah, give
right,
him a
so yeah,
chance to see what he needs to say.
Yeah, and I think, and Frank's question is for Ben primarily, right?
Yeah, Frank said, it seems to me that the size of the project requires several impacts to protected resources in order to make it viable. Has the applicant considered shrinking the footprint to mitigate issues with vernal pool buffer zones and crossing a resource area to enter the development?
Okay, perfect. Nice segue. All right, Ben, I'm sure you've got pages of notes here, but sorry that, we're pushing up against your deadline here, but the floor is yours.
Good evening, Ben Osgood, engineering the project. I just wanted to respond to some of the things that Ann said in her memo and right now. But I'll start with the vernal pool. The vernal pool, the commission does not have the right to say a vernal pool is a vernal pool. Natural heritage makes that determination. We did show it as a vernal pool because we thought it was. Mary Rimmer filed the application to make it a vernal pool, and Natural Heritage denied it. It's been filed again a couple of times, so it's been denied. So I think it's what we thought it was at the time, but it turns out that it isn't. But it's important. It's not under the jurisdiction of the commission to make the determination. So that Wetland Series A vernal pool is not a vernal pool at this point in time. However, we have not altered the vernal pool habitat. And I think the vernal pool actually, I guess you could argue it might go out to the edge of the isolated wetland that's not a resource protectable under the Wetland Protection Act. But we haven't disturbed that habitat. We haven't disturbed any of that isolated wetland or the isolated land subject to flooding. So we've respected that. There is, as Ann said, there is no buffer, but where do you, what do you leave for a buffer? Around that vernal pool, we have, quite a bit of buffer, all except for one spot, and I'd say it probably averages 20 to 30 feet. It's wooded, again, I think we even at one point proposed a split rail fence to keep people out of the area, which would be an acceptable condition, plantings around it, so we are respecting it, but it's just not a certified vernal pool. We had treated it as a certified vernal pool with the same number of units that we have now. So, we've just made we took away a retaining wall, that was ringing some of the units at one point just to, avoid the stormwater flowing down into the vernal pool, So, it's still, it's a constructible project. We can get the same number of units, even if it is a certified vernal pool, but you have to make note, we're not touching it. We're designing around it. We've respected it. So in regards to the setback to stormwater, I actually have a copy of the stormwater regulations here in my house. Nerdy engineers have those sorts of things. So I ran upstairs and got it. There's a list of BMPs that are I think that the table, there's a table. I can't find it right at the second here, but it's table CA2 standard 6. So it says you can't have a BMP within 100 feet of a certified vernal pool, and list the BMPs. There's pre-treatment BMPs, there's treatment BMPs, and infiltration BMPs. So a swale is not listed. So, you know, that drainage swale over on that northeast side, we have that retaining wall. It's just to convey stormwater away from the vernal pool so that you wouldn't have fertilizers, that sort of thing, you know, any pollutants from the developed area entering towards the vernal pool. Our stormwater pond is located outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. It's further than 100 feet from the vernal pool. The septic system's further than 100 feet to the vernal pool. So, you know, in my opinion, we meet all of those regulations in that respect. You know, the next item Ann had located, and the reason I raised my hand when she had the picture up, I wanted to talk about it when the picture up, it showed that green area that we could, you know, have some vegetation. We actually, that area was there for a walking trail that we wanted to give to Martin Burns. We thought it was something that the neighborhood wanted. Nobody wanted it, so we eliminated it. That area actually doesn't need to be cleared. We can move the clearing in a few feet, and we can add buffer along that area as well. So there you go. I was hoping you would do that, Ben. Thank you. So that whole green area, we do have to disturb in front of the wall, probably two feet to get the wall in, plus the erosion control. But that whole green area and the slope adjacent to the septic system, you know, could be revegetated when we were done. We're doing it further down. If you, the copy doesn't go further down, but down along the detention pond at the bottom of that snapshot, we're adding additional plantings in that area as well. Right, they show on that view there, down at the bottom, they were adding buffer zone plantings. So, you know, we don't have any problem extending that up along that tree line at the limit of clearing, and we can hug the limit of clearing it in 3 or 4 feet because we're not putting the walking trail there. So we can see, you know, around that, on that sheet, you can see around that vernal pool, we have a limit of clearing, and it respects the wetlands. That northeast corner, it's pretty close. You know, we do propose a wood fence, split rail fence. You know, we fully intend to maintain that area, and it can, you know, remain as a vernal pool or isolated land subject to flooding. So, and then my last point on that sheet, if you kind of scroll over so you can see the east side, we have along that detention area, I mean, we pretty much have 10 feet along most of that area with very, you know, a couple little exceptions where it might be 8 feet. And we're talking about vegetating that afterwards. And again, if, you know, and our thought was we have larger trees in the areas that were a little bit less than 10 feet. We have, you know, some shrubs, and we could actually, you know, on the bottom side of the downhill side of that detention pond slope, we can add vegetation there as well, you know, shrub vegetation and so on. We do have an access way around the pond that needs to be mowed, but that's going to be 15, 20, 25 feet away from the edge of the BVW in that location. Oh, and then Frank's question was the access, the filling of the wetlands or access. There is no other access. That wetland goes across our access. There is nothing we can do about that. It's considered a limited project. We investigated other ways to get into the property, unless one of the residents on Pearson Drive wants to give us an access to avoid the wetland. There's going to be no other way to get into that property. And then, further on that, Ann's recollection of the replacement area was correct. We were replacing it on the bottom side of, or I guess the south side of the wetlands behind that house. There's some obvious, fill areas in there, and it's disturbed in the buffer zone. We were going to peel out an area in there and do the replacement area. And we, all agreed that moving it across the brook would be better. We walked out, there's a big piece of land, there's some big overstory trees we can keep to help shade our wetland replacement area and provide the forest environment, of a wooded wetland that would be replacing. So I think those are the points I wanted to raise so far in the conversation. So.
Can I ask a question?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
Ben, can you, and maybe call up the plan, the Conservation Commission brought up a point about those arrows and drainage across the back of, I have no idea what the unit number is.
21, 22.
And the bottom of the slope, there's a different image that shows the actual grading for the septic system.
Well, it would have been the next plan in the plan set. Next sheet is the grading right there.
So can you speak to what that is and why or why not you think it is not a BMP or stormwater or drainage in the context of being required to be set back 100 feet?
Right. So table CA 2 for standard 6 lists the BMPs. A swale is not a BMP. That's just it's to move the water over to the detention pond.
It doesn't list it, Ben, it doesn't list, you didn't list off any specific BMP. You listed off 3 broad categories of BMPs, which basically now puts the onus on me, I feel like, to go up and look at what pre, post, and what does fall under these broad categories of BMPs. I'd also say that you didn't address the meat of Frank's question at all. You picked one tiny little bit, so I'd like to hear a response to that.
Okay.
He was in the middle of answering one of Ann's questions. So
I apologize.
Let Ann and Ben finish, and then you can have a turn.
So there's a list. I can read it off here. Deep sump catch basin, oil grit separator, proprietary separator, sediment forebay, vegetative filter strip, filtering bioretention areas, including rain gardens, and constructed stormwater ponds, gravel wetlands, proprietary media filter, exfiltrating bioretention areas, including rain gardens, dry wells, infiltration basins, infiltration structures, and subsurface structures. So those are the BMPs listed in the table. There's nothing about swales. There isn't anything about a pipe. Those are just, we're grading and we're moving the water over to the BMP. It's not a treatment device there. It would just conveying the water to our BMP, which would be done on any lawn area, roadway area in the buffer zone. And that's what we specifically moved our detention pond down into that area to, get it outside of the 100-foot buffer to the vernal pool.
Can I just press Ben on another issue on this? Because I think it's important for the commission to hear this. And I tried to call up the stormwater regs online, but the stormwater management policy defines best management practices, does it not? Beyond what's listed in that table, it defines what BMPs are, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And is swales listed as a BMP in the definition? Or actually, maybe it's the Wetlands Protection Act, not to live
No.
action do this in front of the whole world, but
A swale is not listed. A treatment swale is listed. So there are treatment swales that you can construct, but we haven't constructed a treatment swale. We're just grading and moving the water down to our BMP.
I would just encourage you and or the commission to look at the definition of a stormwater best management practice in the Wetlands Protection Act. It just begs a closer look. I will ask, I reach out to a contact at the department who knows this well for their input on a situation such as this as well, to see if it will add any clarity.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am. While you've got Ben Osgood, before I give him to Ben Gahagan, are you good?
Oh, am I good?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so Ben Gahagan, you've got a question for Ben Osgood.
Yeah. I don't know if I do anymore. I don't know. I would just say that swales seems to be listed here under those stormwater BMPs, structural BMPs, vegetated filter strip section. In the short amount of time I've had to do some homework on it. So I do think it's probably important for us to look at what Ann was mentioning. I would like to hear an answer to the true substance of Frank's question. And then third, I would say, if I bring it back up, I just have a hard time with the applicant stating they're respecting any function of the vernal pool, potential vernal pool or wetland here, when in the Wetlands Protection Act, the wildlife value and the associated area around that vernal pool is part of the resource value that they state. So to say that we didn't actually go in, but we completely took away the buffer and we're respecting the wetlands is a hard argument for me to completely understand. So.
Well, it's an isolated land subject to flooding, which, I mean, potentially we could be sitting here fighting, as Ann said, it can't be treated like a vernal pool unless it's certified. That we could potentially be filling it in and plunking houses there and digging a hole somewhere else to replace the volume, because that's all that's required under the Wetland Protection Act. So, from that respect, we could grab a few more units, but we've left that area alone. We're not doing that, because that is, and Ann can tell you, if I fill an ILSF, I just have to dig a hole somewhere to replace that ILSF storage volume, which is listed over on the left side of the page on the ANRAD plan. So, that's how you would treat that ILSF in a lot of cases.
That's fine, thank you. And so, one recurring question I've had that I've never really gotten an answer from, and that was I was struggling to remember, is that, and why is it that, in your professional opinion, that's where I was going with that question I sent you, doing replication away from the road, but still close to this wetland series here is worse than doing it here? That's what I have not been able to wrap my head around, is like, you could do the replication anywhere in here. It's still going to be away from all this stuff. And, it's just as close to the road here as it would be to any, it's further from the road or any unit if you put it along this part of the wetland series. So I've had a hard time understanding why it would not be better here.
And I can understand that. I think there's one thing to point out to you. When you were moving your cursor around, there is a dashed line that is the 100-foot setback to the vernal pool, that you're trying to maintain as much of the habitat or setback to that vernal pool as possible. So I would not advocate for going in to that area and cutting down all the trees or expanding the wetland there. I would do
Okay,
it
so you're saying
outside of
because
that.
this is to the, I forget what, so this is the southwest of that line.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That clears that up for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, Sam, do you want to chime in here? I believe you've got a few resources that might help this discussion.
Yeah, so I have the stormwater best management practice definition if we'd like to hear it. And that this is in the WPA regulations. So stormwater best management practice means a structural or non-structural technique for managing stormwater to prevent or reduce non-point source pollutants from entering surface waters or groundwaters. A structural stormwater best management practice includes a basin, discharge outlet, swale, rain garden, filter, or other stormwater treatment practice or measure either alone or in combination, including without limitation any overflow pipe, conduit, weir control structure that is not naturally occurring. And I'm sorry, B actually got cut off down at the bottom. I can't read it, but swale is included in the stormwater BMP definition within the WPA regulations. That's 310 CMR 10.04 definitions under S. And I actually also have another stormwater stormwater note under the Town of Newbury Stormwater Management Illicit Discharge and Erosion Control Rules and Regulations, which states sensitive areas. Stormwater discharges to critical areas with sensitive resources may be subject to additional criteria or may need to utilize or restrict certain stormwater management practices at the discretion of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission may designate sensitive areas and specific criteria for these areas after conducting a public hearing in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 5C public hearing of the Town of Newbury Stormwater Management and Illicit Discharge Erosion Control Bylaw. So there's that too.
There is an important sentence if you got cut off and didn't read B and C in the definition.
Yes.
Which I can read. B is, this is a continuous of what's, it's structural stormwater best management practices include, and it lists all the ones that she read. But C says, including control structures that, C has been designed, constructed, installed for the purpose of conveying, collecting, storing, discharging, recharging, or treating stormwater. Structural, non-structural stormwater best management practices include source control and pollution prevention measures.
Okay, so this is good. I feel like we're getting clarity. Definitions. Okay, so.
Sorry, would you like me to read Frank's question as well at some point to get?
I thought you did.
I did, but Ben Gehagen had said that he didn't believe that all of the points were fully addressed.
Let's hold off on that. It's okay, because Ben Osgood heard the question and he's answering in his own manner. So then at this point, I think we have some disagreements that we need to work out. Ben Osgood has stated what he believes, the facts of the matter to be, and we've got some disagreements, certainly from Ben. I know I disagree with some of the things he said. So we obviously need to have some conversation. Ben, Osgood, you said 8:15, you got to go, and I see it's a little bit after. So I want to, let you have that time to go. We do still need to sort of turn to the public on this. Ben, is there anybody else from your party that's in the audience?
Yeah, I know Doug DeShane, attorney, would like to speak.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Or is it just Doug?
Can I clarify something just real quickly before we move forward? Just to make sure everyone on this call, including the commission, understands, I am not an engineer. I am a wetland scientist. So I'm looking at the stormwater from a wetland science perspective. And the stormwater was not peer reviewed in a traditional stormwater sense by me. It was peer reviewed by someone else. So I just want to make sure that you realize that you're relying on me looking at this as a wetland scientist, not advising you from a structural engineering perspective. And that Joe Sawatka reviewed that for the commission from a stormwater, or for the zoning board from the stormwater position.
Right, that's a good point to remember to keep in mind. Thank you, that was good. So then, Ben, before you go and Doug jumps in, is there any point you want some clarity on before you get off the call? Anything pressing on your mind?
I guess I don't disagree with, I read it as the BMPs down below or in that table are, what you can't have within 100 feet of the vernal pool. So that's my interpretation, and I know we can probably differ.
Right, good. Okay, well then the one thing I think that, I think you should take from this, the one takeaway lesson would be, it sounds as if, based on the conversation and the questions that have come through so far, you've got a lot of people on the board who, basically disagree with your interpretation of the vernal pool and how to manage it. So if you can find a way between now and the next meeting to work on something to push away from the vernal pool, I think that would go over well. Obviously you disagree, but I'm just saying, for the sake of summary, it sounds like you're going to get a lot of pushback on that. So,
yep. So I do have to go. I know Attorney DeShane wants to speak.
All right, so we'll do the baton pass.
So Ben,
Yes.
you can leave, but I don't think anything's going to start unless I leave this meeting too, and I'm not leaving this meeting.
I have two hearings in Andover.
Okay.
I have two hearings in
Okay.
Andover. The one you're on,
All right.
and then another one. So they'll just skip
Okay.
to my second one.
I'm peer reviewing something of his in Andover. I just wanted to let him know they're not going to start till I get there. So, and they
We'll
know
go to my
I'm here.
They'll go to my number 2, I think. So
Okay.
thank you very much, everyone.
The beauty of Zoom. There's no way you could have done Andover and Newberry in the same night without Zoom.
Oh, that's correct. And they're very kind because they will just bump it until I show up. They know I'm with you guys, so.
Well, you're going to have to thank them for us. Okay, so then we obviously need to turn to the other side. Doug, I see you've been bumped up to the octo, whatever number 8 is, octo. So do you want to make any points on what you've heard so far? Obviously trying not to repeat anything because Ann needs to go and get on the.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief, but I think one thing that was not mentioned, at least with respect to this never-ending question on the certification of the vernal pool, is that the letter that was read from Natural Heritage dated August of this year was actually in response to a third filing with Natural Heritage, asking them to look at that vernal pool based on information, I believe, submitted by an abutter. So it has not always been us submitting the information to Natural Heritage. but in fact, it has been done 3 separate times, including once by, based on data from an abutter, and a site visit by Natural Heritage, who came out to review it. And my interpretation of their letter is that not that any of the applications were missing information, but rather that none of the applications submitted information showing that the hydrology of the pool satisfied the criteria to be certified. So it wasn't a question of missing information or misinformation, or that the Natural Heritage did not have enough information to make a decision. Rather, there was no information that showed the hydrology was correct. So there have been 3 passes at this. And with that, I'd like to answer the question, Mr. Wettenkamp's question, and that is that, with all due respect, no, my clients are not inclined to reduce or make this project any smaller so as to recognize that ILSF as a vernal pool. In fact, what we did, sir, is determine that it wasn't a vernal pool. Natural Heritage 3 times has done that. And then we designed our project to be in conformance with the wetland regulations. And that was determined by peer review of our application through the Zoning Board of Appeal. I think that there's nothing in the answers from Ms. Martin that indicate that her determination that we were in conformance with the Wetlands Protection Act at that point is different today. So no, we're not going to change the project. We have our comprehensive permit. This permit under the Wetlands Protection Act is the last permit we need. We believe we have submitted information, all of the information to show that we are in conformance with the law. And so again, sir, we are not going to redesign the project at this time. Rather, we would like the commission to make a determination as to the filing before them.
Are you asking for a vote tonight?
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to be a spoiler before your neighbors get to speak, but we will be asking the commission to close the hearing tonight. We're not going to grant any further extensions. We do believe we have provided you more than adequate information, as well as allowing Ms. Martin to answer all of the questions that you've had. We're not going to debate the vernal pool issue. We are not debating whether or not that swale is a BMP. The drainage was in fact peer reviewed by an engineer who knows the stormwater regulations. It's the engineer that the town of Newbury, including this commission, has used, Mr. Swatka, and he did conclude that our stormwater design was in keeping with all applicable regulations. So we're going to stand behind that. We're going to stand behind Mr. Osgood's position, and the commission obviously has the right to make its own determination as whether or not we've been protected of the resource areas as we are required to do. But yes, sir, again, with all due respect, we are going to ask the commission to close the public hearing tonight.
So that's fine. Thank you for the clarity. Yeah, what is that?
Brian, can I make a clarification? So Doug, you said that email that I read earlier was in response to a third request to certify that vernal pool. It was not. That email that I read earlier was in response to an email that I sent to Jacob Kubel at Natural Heritage. I introduced myself and stated that I was asked to reach out to him to get more information about the vernal pool versus ILSF debate. I said that the commission was asking for an explanation of why Natural Heritage would not certify the ILSF area as a vernal pool at this time, even with the egg masses that were located there, and stated that the abutters had kind of made that request and had submitted some information. What he said exactly was that based on the available data, they've not been able to conclude or presume with confidence that the ILSF has an adequate hydro period in most years. And he also said that they had requested that the observers, and noted 2 different parties, he didn't name them, he just said 2 different parties. He said that they had requested that the observers provide additional information about the wetlands hydro period. So he wasn't saying, no, we won't certify it, no, we can't certify it because there's not enough information. He said that there isn't enough information to make a determination, and in order to make that determination, essentially to decide whether that area provides a suitable habitat over the right amount of time to allow for the amphibians in the area to continue their life cycle, as opposed to the eggs being laid and then dying because it dries out. They've requested that there be more information provided. So he didn't say one way or the other, he requested more information and stated that they couldn't make an official determination based off of what they had been provided up to that point.
Well, I do apologize for that, for being confused in that regard. Samantha, I assumed, given that the letter was dated in late August, that it had come after the 3rd review by Natural Heritage, including a site visit, which they conducted. So I do apologize. I didn't realize you had asked them for that letter. Rather, I thought that was their response to the 3rd review, which in fact, we did receive indication of that same determination after the 3rd review. So that's why I thought those were one and the same. I do apologize, but the bottom line is that we have, that this has been reviewed by Natural Heritage 3 times. There's no question about that. And I don't know what more we can do. I mean, the information that was provided the first time was collected by Mary Rimmer. And the information that was submitted the 3rd time was collected by an abutter who is, believes it to be a vernal pool. So, in my opinion, It's been decided. We're not going to keep filing this for the next 5 years until we finally get a decision that it's a vernal pool. It's not a vernal pool. We've applied based on that determination, and that's the bottom line. Thank you.
All right. Well, like I said, I appreciate the straightforward talk. Pete, I see you chewing on your fingernails a little bit. Do you have something on your mind?
I do, and thank you very much, sir. Doug, I just want to kind of take a couple steps back, and it's always good to listen to history, because history allows us to understand where we've been and where we're going. Other than some minor modifications in the design of the plan from the first plan that rolled out, this plan is very similar. Is that correct? Overall,
when you say first plan, do you mean the prior developer?
Yes. The prior development. It's pretty similar, because I mean, I was on planning, it looked the same. I mean, it had a couple of tweaks here and there. And with that understanding, and again, I'm going to go back to the historical perspective. If the previous developer was ready to say, hey, listen, we're going to treat this as a vernal pool. That was a very important starting foundation piece. And I was kind of offended when Ben said it's been denied. It hasn't been denied. There has been a request for more information, and those are 2 totally different perspectives. So if Natural Heritage is saying we're looking for more information, the previous developer said, hey, listen, we're going to treat it as one. We have some other information that's before the commission that's saying looks like it was previously, because it was pool/S, leaving the understanding that there probably is something there that hasn't been certified that might be certified. Trying to negotiate this further, Doug, without it getting, you going through the appeal process and this being delayed a couple of years, does it make sense to truly look at that point from a historical perspective to bring it to today?
Peter, I can't honestly speak, and I do wish Ben was here, but I can't speak to the differences in our project from the original project, where I understand they treated that ILSF as a vernal pool, at least for design purposes. And I don't even know that to be true. But I do know that we did make significant changes to the project that we brought forth to the zoning board based on both Mr. Swatka and Ms. Martin's comments. And I mean, you'll recall, we were months and months, working through the drainage, working through the wetland and vernal pool issues. And we made every change required of us during that review. So there were major changes made to our plan. And then, and as we indicated earlier tonight, I mean, when the question came up about whether or not we could or would put additional plantings and recreate some buffer along the base of the wall and within the buffer area to the ILSF. You heard Ben say, we'd be happy to do that. If that's what the commission wants, to be comfortable that we're not impacting the ILSF, the resource areas, the vernal pool, I mean, we will do that. But that's not where this conversation is going. This conversation is going in circles regarding the certification of that vernal pool. And it's just this, it's never going to end, because what's the next request, Peter? That we don't do anything until next spring and we do another study of the vernal pool, and then we figure out whether it's a vernal pool, and if it is, great, now we have to redesign our project, start over essentially. And if it's not, well, then we're where we are today. So with all due respect, I mean, I just don't see, I mean, if the commission has specific requests with regard to buffering, to adding more plantings, to, providing more buffers, we're all ears, but it just doesn't seem it's going that way. It's just the commission is trying to, just won't let go of this vernal pool question. And, the fact that we're now claiming that shame on us for calling it a swale. All it is that backyard is slightly graded so that the water flows in the correct direction. It's not a channelized swale. It's not any of the things that are BMP, but boy, we're trying to put that size 10 shoe in a size 5 shoe so that we can say, oh, well, that grading of the lawn is not allowed. Guys, we're going nowhere. Quite frankly, my client has directed me to ask you to close, and we'll let DEP resolve these questions once and for all, because we're not going to get it here. We're just being honest.
Well, let me jump in. Those the thing that you're requesting, the risk you take in that is that, as you heard Ann say, there are several areas of gray here from, her professional opinion as a wetland scientist doing peer reviews, up and down the decades. You are telling us it's a black and white issue from your side, from your perspective. And we are looking to get the gray out. And so I agree that this is taking forever, but your certainty in your statements is not reflected in the information and the science that we have. And so if you push a vote, what will probably end up happening is that, you heard it said earlier, Ben said there is a project here that's permittable, but we will condition an approval on taking the gray out of these points that were made and say, okay, we can permit a project that has a full 100-foot buffer on the vernal pool. And then you're just stuck with that, and that's what you have to appeal. We won't deny it. We're not going to deny the project. We will approve it, protecting these things that we are trying to understand. And if you would like an approval that is very strict in that regard, putting a 100-foot buffer around the vernal pools as a no disturb. I mean, you can have it if you really want it, but I would recommend waiting to get some clarity, both for the rest of the commission, the public process, and your client, because I don't think your client wants the thing that I just mentioned.
Well,
And I'll let you think about it. I'll give you a minute.
no, I
I'll
appreciate
give
your
you a minute.
thoughts, but this isn't always necessarily my opinion or my determination. However, I don't disagree with my client's position that we're willing to take our chances at DEP, because when you say you want to eliminate the gray, if one of the gray eliminations you want to get rid of is whether or not that's a vernal pool, we're done with that issue. We are truly done with that issue.
Because the vernal pool is on the ORAD. You know, the ORAD controls the boundaries of things. And it's we don't know if it meets this point, that point, but it is on the ORAD. And that is a permit that's good for 3 years that says this flagged area is a vernal pool on the plan. So, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, if you want to, like, if you really want to, like, you could text them, you know, go one more meeting, go 2 more meetings, is probably a lot simpler than the other potential outcome.
Yeah, to Brian's point, one of our take homes, if there was no vote, would be talking to town council to figure out what exactly that means. Like, that's one of our take home assignments, or we can just potentially make a conservative decision based on protecting the resource, which is probably what our job is, because that's what we're here for.
And I
but I'd also-
respect that. I know you have a job to do, as do I.
Yeah.
But as far as the ORAD being a determinative of whether or not that is a vernal pool or not, I disagree with your position there. The Wetlands Protection Act is very clear. We're talking about certified vernal pools, and this commission identifying it as a vernal pool in an ORAD does not certify that pool.
You are correct. It's not certified, but the certified vernal pool language is in the stormwater regs. In the WPA, the wildlife habitat protection speaks to vernal pools and vernal pool habitat. And
Which is located within a resource area. That 100 feet has to be
Yep.
within the resource area.
You know,
And
Brian,
we are protective of that. And we believe we've designed.
Brad,
I'm
I
not-
noted that there's a hand up in the audience that's been up for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, no, we're gonna turn. I just want to make sure Doug knows what he's opening up here. All right, so let's go to the audience. Let's have some commentary from the other side, and we'll see if Doug gets any texts in the meantime. So Liz, right? You're the only hand.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Pyle. I'm an attorney at Hill Law, and I submitted a letter to the commission dated October 15th that I wanted to bring to your attention. And I have a number of points that I'd like to respond to with respect to the things that have been said this evening. Let me just adjust my screen a second. Thanks very much. I heard a lot tonight about whether the second vernal pool on the site, whether the potential vernal pool can be protected, and what are the commission's obligations with respect to that. But what I didn't hear was an important provision of the Massachusetts Wildlife Habitat Protection Guidance for Inland Wetlands, which says that the commission has discretion to treat uncertified vernal pool habitat as vernal pool habitat when there's clear and convincing evidence that the area is functioning as a vernal pool. So it doesn't really matter whether Natural Heritage has made a determination for the potential vernal pool. You have the authority to treat it as a vernal pool. And Mass DEP is clear on that This is the Massachusetts Wildlife Habitat Protection Guidance for Inland Wetlands, page 7, says there's a presumption that an area is a vernal pool only when it's certified, but this is rebuttable and it may be overcome by a clear showing to the contrary. In land subject to flooding where there is no certified vernal pool, there's a presumption the habitat doesn't exist. However, when there is a clear and convincing evidence that an area is a vernal pool, the issuing authority can issue a finding overcoming the presumption and establishing that area as vernal pool habitat. So you have it within your discretion to determine that the potential vernal pool has vernal pool habitat and protect it accordingly. The second thing that I heard tonight that was interesting and surprising was that the applicant is considering closing the hearing tonight. And if that occurs, I want to remind the commission of some ways that it can strengthen any decision that it may issue on this project. The first would be to deny the project for failure to submit requested information to the commission. And in that circumstance, DEP just evaluates whether the information submitted to the commission is enough to approve or deny the project or condition the project accordingly. So if you have a clear request to the applicant that you would like more information on whether the stormwater complies, more information on whether the ORAD on the plan establishes that the vernal pool is protectable, you can ask for that information. You can ask for more information on the applicant's burden to prove that work in the buffer zone would not harm the wildlife habitat in the certified vernal pool. So if you make those information requests clear to the applicant and they don't provide that information to you and instead ask to close the hearing, and your decision says, well, we're denying the project because certain information was not provided, then in any DEP appeal, DEP will first look at whether sufficient information was provided. And if it wasn't, they'll send it back to you. And the Bosworth decision, which I gave to you in my letter of October 15th, says that you can't leapfrog over a commission to try to get an approval from DEP when the commission has asked for more information and the applicant has failed to provide that information. Now, going to the merits of their proposal, I just talked about how you can decide that this vernal pool, the second vernal pool, is protectable. But our major position here is that the applicant has not shown that their project will be protective of the vernal pool habitat and the wildlife habitat in the certified vernal pool. And I don't want to lose sight of the impacts to the certified vernal pool because of all the discussion about the other uncertified vernal pool. So we provided the commission with a water budget analysis from Patrick Gardner, who's a wetland scientist. And he's here tonight and would like to speak to you about his analysis. And Mr. Gardner concluded that this project would cause direct adverse impacts to the certified vernal pool in terms of altering its hydro period so that its hydro period is not balanced between pre and post-construction impacts. And the Bosworth decision, which I provided to you, provides extra clarification to conservation commissions and applicants about what their responsibilities are with respect to buffer zone impacts to certified vernal pools. And that decision clearly states that you have to have a water budget that is balanced between pre and post-construction impacts, and that you can't alter the hydro period of a certified vernal pool. Mr. Gardner's water budget analysis definitively shows that this project would alter the hydro period of the certified vernal pool and would cause direct adverse impacts to it. So therefore, this project can't be conditioned as designed. I'd like to have Mr. Gardner, who's on the call now, speak more and answer any questions that you would have about his water budget and what it means for the permittability of this project.
So I'm Patrick Garner.
Actually, hold on, Mr. Garner, before you step in.
Sure.
Ms. Pyle, while you're on, does anybody have a question from the commission for Ms. Pyle about her letter? I did get the chance to read it. I don't know who else did, but while we're on that topic, does anyone want to get into that? Or would you rather go on to Mr. Garner?
I would be happy to answer questions now or at the conclusion. I'd like Mr. Garner to speak. And then there's Mr. John Chesia is here on the call as well. And I'd like to speak, I'd like to have him speak about his stormwater analysis, because that also hasn't been discussed tonight. And the peer review of the stormwater before the ZBA did not adequately evaluate the project. Mr. Chesia found numerous violations of the DEP stormwater standards. And I know that the ZBA's peer reviewer for stormwater is not here tonight to address these, but we've provided the commission now with expert analysis from both a stormwater engineer and a wetland scientist. And the commission can rely upon these outside experts in formulating its decision on the project. And there's DEP case law that says that a commission just doesn't have to rely on its peer reviewers. A commission can rely on any evidence presented to it from any source in reaching its decision. And so I'd like Mr. Gardner and Mr. Chesia to speak about their opinions tonight. And I hope that it informs your position when you're reviewing the project.
Okay, thank you again. Pete, I see I see your video. Everyone else turned theirs off. Do you have any questions about the legal letter?
No, I was going to thank the drafter of the letter. It was a very well documented letter, and I am very much looking forward to hearing from your individuals who help also some blanks for us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Ben, anything on the legal angle? Nothing. Okay, Dan.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Did he
I
say?
kind of have a question on the legal angle.
Now's the time. Otherwise, you're gonna get confused by water budgets.
Okay. Don't want to be confused by water budgets. My question about the legal angle was, and yes, Ann is still here. Can we? Is there enough space to bring Ann and make this a nonogram? Is that allowed? Is that a word?
What was that?
Nano, is that right? I don't even know. So the guidelines that Attorney Pyle brought up, I wanted to get any experience, your input on those, and then also, this is a tad bit redundant of my question to you in the letter that we sent, but a sense of your experience with the certificate, over your time doing this, what your experience has been in the certification of vernal pools and the bars they have to meet, because I've in talking to wetland scientists and environmental consultants, it seems like in the past, documenting egg masses, documenting larval obligate species, transformed larval species in adequate numbers led to certification. And there seems to be some confusion about sliding bars potentially and things like that. So I think it's like kind of a mixture of the two questions for that.
Yeah, and Brian, when I have a chance to talk, I think I can address some of that as well.
Okay,
See,
great.
Patrick, how much we agree, right?
Exactly.
Wow, you asked quite a few questions.
I did. Sorry.
I would caution the commission and Ms. Pyle to take a guidance document and decide that a guidance document has the same control or power of the act or the regulations. It's a guidance document to inform an understanding of the act or regulations. It does not take the place of or function as a replacement for a guidance document. So I would say that. I would say that the limited project provisions of the Wetlands Protection discretion to the commission in relationship to the limited project portion of the project. I don't know that it grants broader discretion across the board, across the entire project. So for instance, your project is a limited project, not because it's near a vernal pool or because there's a certified vernal pool and a potential vernal pool. It's a limited project because you need to impact a wetland to gain access to your project site, and that's what makes it limited. So the limited project provisions and some of the quotes that Ms. Pyle has included and say that that discretion and that broad discretion relates to the impacts to those wetlands, replication of that wetlands, mitigation to offset those impacts, because you have to impact those wetlands in order to access the site. What I can tell you, and again, there's a lot of this cross-reference to vernal pools that all of a sudden grant this authority to look at habitat in the uplands to the vernal pool. It feels like a dangerous place to be. And it has not been my experience and my discussions with members of the department with depth of experience in the Northeast region on this subject matter. I have asked them this specific question about certification, and when it's the regs are clear that natural heritage is the authority that certifies, and they're the authority that makes these discretionary calls. And so I think there's a little bit of, I'm not sure that Ms. Pyle is using the vernal pool habitat section in the wildlife habitat guidance appropriately. The wildlife habitat, it's very clear when the circumstances are that you are supposed to conduct a wildlife habitat evaluation in relationship to 1060 and apply these standards. And I'm uncomfortable with the idea that that wholesale gets applied to work in the buffer zone. Well, not even in the buffer zone, because there's no buffer zone to ILSF, or work in the buffer zone. I think you can apply the buffer zone standards, and the Wetlands Protection Act is clear about the criteria that you need to evaluate if you're in the buffer zone to see if it's impacting a wetland or a resource area, that I have quoted several times to the applicant during the zoning board process. I don't know if it's contained in any of Ms. Pyle or Mr. Garner's information, but I feel like this is a slippery slope that is not necessarily on stable ground as far as the way they're interpreting and guiding you as to how vernal pool habitat works in the regs. And I realize that as a peer reviewer to you, that might not be what you want to hear from me or expect me to say, but I'm going to tell you the honest truth about what I think the regs say or what my experience is, whether it benefits the applicant or the commission, because I feel like that's what my job is. And I have not thoroughly reviewed Ms. Pyle's work or Mr. Garner's, so I haven't gotten really deep into what they've done.
Would you then say that the second part of my question about your experience in the certification of vernal pools and the thresholds is kind of moot?
Because one of the vernal pools is not certified?
Yeah, I mean, so my question was, I think that maybe summarizing I'll summarize what I think I said and what I think you said, which was that, is there actual leeway for the commission under the WPA to treat a non-certified vernal pool as a vernal pool? And it sounds like you're saying I would not do that.
I would like, in all honesty, I would like to call the department and ask their opinion on this, because I am not going to advise you guys in a direction that I don't think is sound. I mean, I've had this discussion with them before, but on my own projects and on other subject matters, I don't hesitate to call the department and ask them again on things. And I haven't read all of the case law that Ms. Pyle is putting out there, but that takes a lot of time. It's very easy to read case law and think it applies to a scenario when it actually doesn't. So you got to really understand what the subject matter of the decision was and why it was written the way it was, and is that parallel to this case? And I just simply don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like my second part is completely moot yet, which was if we have the opportunity to talk to the department and get clarification on this, what has your experience in the certification of vernal pools been as far as a threshold of evidence? For instance, have you seen vernal pools that documented multiple years of egg masses, larval obligate species, transformed obligate species over the threshold, minimum threshold numbers in the criteria, and no data on hydro period leading to the certification of a vernal pool? Or has it always been you need to have this hydro period data?
Well, the hydro period data is, I mean, it's in the definition, it talks about that it holds water for 60 days. It doesn't say how deep the water has to be for 60 days, but the point of the hydro period is for the species breeding in the pool to complete the process. If a wood frog lays an egg mass and the pool consistently every year dries up before they hatch or before they transform, then it's not really a viable vernal pool producing the species. And I'm not saying that's happening here. I'm saying that I'm interpreting from what Sam read, and the absence of data. I have no data in front of me. I don't know, maybe Patrick's seen the data. I haven't seen any of the data submitted by the abutters.
Yeah.
So,
No,
it's
so
hard
I guess I shouldn't have been so specific to this case. I guess I'm just saying, so there are, and this is really to the philosophical basis of Pete's question, earlier thing about looking at the history of and where that can inform us, where in your experience as a wetland scientist dealing with vernal pools, has there been instances where meeting some of the criteria but not having information about all the separate criteria led to the certification of vernal pools, or has it always been you must meet every bulleted criteria point in order to be a certified vernal pool?
I guess the way I would answer it is I've never submitted insufficient data to Natural Heritage for certification of a vernal pool. So I've never, and I'm not trying to be cavalier. I don't know that Patrick's ever done that either. I mean, it's like.
That's some shade.
I asked both of our wildlife biologists. I took this question to them and I'm like, have you guys ever had a situation where this happened? And both of them were like, no. Now, and that's that. I don't want anybody to misinterpret that statement. That is not, you know, that is not to diss anyone or to pat us on the back or to say that the abutters have not gathered sufficient data. It's the question of whether they clearly Natural Heritage feels like they have not received sufficient data. But having not seen the data, I don't know why they said no. I understand the concept behind it, but I mean, we could look at it in, yeah.
Brian, can I quickly answer Ben's questions, because I have reviewed the filing. I do have a little bit more information.
Yeah, Pat, we'll go to you in a hot second. I just want to give Ms. Pyle a chance, or if you just want to go straight to Patrick, that's fine.
We can go straight to Pat since this is the hot topic of the moment, but I would like an opportunity to address some other of Ms. Martin's concerns after Mr. Gardner's done. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to bounce around here a
Love it
little
if you
bit
sent me
because
some of the data so I could see it. If you have the data, I would love to see it.
okay, yeah, we can do it. I didn't collect the data on the pool, but I did review it, and it was collected by an abutter who happens to be a very qualified biologist. So we've been referring to him as an abutter, but in fact, he's a professional. And on this particular pool, this, as Ann calls it, the PVP, he collected more than 5 egg masses for wood frogs and more than 5 egg masses for spotted salamanders. So it appears to be quite a robust pool. I personally certified dozens of vernal pools over my career, and I have never submitted hydro period data, and I've never been asked by NHESP to submit hydro period data. So this pool, for whatever reason, has been flagged and is an unusual animal. It's outside the scope of any of my experience, and I've talked to other wetland scientists and asked the same question, and everybody's been kind of startled. So I can't get into the head of Jacob Kubel, who is a great guy at NHESP. But this is an unusual feature, and I guess that's the best I can clarify it. But anyway, if I may, let me segue into the water budget issue.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Have you seen this pool or this area? Because it is rather shallow and broad. It is not your classic.
Yeah, I have stood on the abutter's property, I think it was in April, early April, and looked into the pool. And I did so with binoculars, and I watched the abutter waiting around, and it was shallow in much of the pool. I can't say that throughout the entire pool it was the same depth. It may vary in depth. I don't really know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I may, Brian, I'll shift into the bigger thing. So the water budget is a big deal. And I raised this issue initially in a letter to the commission in June. The applicant didn't address it to my knowledge. I've heard nothing about it whatsoever. So we've gone into much more detail in my letter to the commission in October. And the necessity to do these flowed out of an adjudicatory hearing in 2015 in a case in Dighton, and it was a similar sort of project where it was a 40B and the town opposed it, and the commission denied the project, and it went through appeals. And by the time it got into adjudicatory, the town, actually it was through me, submitted a comprehensive water budget of the vernal pools involved on the site. And the adjudicatory decision was that they were critical and that they play a crucial role in determining whether a proposed project impacts the vernal pool. In that particular case, there was no direct filling of any vernal pool, no direct impact. It was a similar sort of thing where it was a buffer zone impacts. And as we have shown with this particular project, we are able to show in that instance that, in fact, there were multiple impacts. It's a fairly simple process. Vernal pools have a hydro period, and that's typically defined as the amount of water that they have over an annual period. And the hydro period, or the water coming into that vernal pool, is from two sources. It's from surface water runoff and from groundwater. The groundwater is measurable, but it's very difficult to do. So it's far more practical to do a surface water analysis using the watershed for the vernal pool. And that's what we had done in Dighton. I've done this on numerous other projects since that date. And we followed the same analysis in Newberry and the report that I submitted to you. So we look at the watershed first, and we look at pre-development, and we determine what that is. And then we look at the watershed post-development, and that's the key trigger. Has that changed, or did the applicant and the engineer maintain that same quantity? And in this case, it's reduced by over 40% post-development. So that's a significant blow to the vernal pool. We also look at the amount of change in impervious area. And in this case, the impervious area increases by 13%. We also look at velocity as another factor, and that is the speed at which stormwater flows into the vernal pool. Does it become flashier, in other words? And the speed increases by more than 50% from what it is pre-development. So these are all fairly significant changes. The volume of water coming into the pool from the project, because of the increase in impervious area, increases 14%. The depth of the water flowing into the pool post-development versus pre-development increases by about 50%. So all of these factors combine, and if there were one or two of these that changed significantly, you could argue that there was an impact. But every one of the criteria that we use that when we look at these significantly changed. So I'm disappointed that Ben Osgood is not on board, because these are things that are typically addressed by the applicant's engineering and design team.
He is back.
And he's back. Good.
It's back.
Yeah, and of course my report is available to him. But you know, this is when the Bosworth Dighton case was decided in 2015. It really rippled as a small earthquake through the wetland field. No longer did the regulations stand as they were written, but they had this added component that had to be looked at by an applicant who was working within the buffer zone to the vernal pool. So that's sort of what we've done. I addressed in this report as well, and I know that we're now segueing back to the PVP, and I don't want to spend more than a moment talking about it because of using Ann's word because of the ambiguity. But the alterations to the watershed for the PVP are far more dramatic than they are for the certified vernal pool. They essentially eviscerate and destroy the entire watershed in its natural form and replace it with grading, complete alteration of all vegetation, and the addition of dramatic additions of impervious area as units, driveways, sidewalks. So I think the issue of whether this is a PVC and whether it's protectable becomes critical as well to this entire issue. As an aside, I want to give the commission credit. We've now been at this for about 2 hours, and this has been an amazingly civil discussion. They often shift in a different direction, and you guys have been great. Let me skim my report very quickly and make sure there's nothing else critical I want to mention. We've talked about habitat. I tend to agree totally with Ann and her analysis of the habitat on the certified vernal pool. But you know, that being said, the regulations are one thing, and the practical habitat is a different animal. And we all know that wood frogs use the uplands as far as 800 feet away from a VP during their life cycle. Spotted salamanders go up as much as 1,200 feet. So they travel throughout the upland woods, and features like retaining walls, which are part of this project, beside the certified vernal pool, do stop cold any movement of species that may be occurring in that section. There's another interesting thing, and as I look at it as an omission on this filing, and that is that we don't really know, if you think about it, what the extent of the certified vernal pool is. We have an edge of it that's shown on the plans, and that's it. We don't know whether it's a narrow linear vernal pool or whether it's a huge vernal pool that goes 100 feet in the other direction. So it's a little difficult to thoroughly address the impacts to it, because we're only given a snapshot of an edge, which is very unusual in my experience. Usually you know the extent and size of it. And give me just another 10 seconds, and I think I will have basically presented what I had to say. Yeah, Ann has addressed, and I'll come back to 10.60, which is the wildlife habitat and the WPA. They're not required to do a wildlife analysis as long as there aren't direct impacts to the vernal pool. My position is that the water budget clearly shows that there would be impacts to the vernal pool from the project, and that would trigger the need to do a wildlife analysis. I think the regs are very clear about that. The threshold is whether there are impacts or alterations to the resource area. One follows the other. So if we can establish that there are impacts, and I think the water budget does that, then we establish that we in fact need to do a wildlife habitat. So if this goes into appeal, clearly DEP is going to be well aware of these same issues. And they're going to look at these and say, well, where's the information? So again, I would encourage, if possible, the applicant to address the issues rather than dodge them, I think. Thank you.
All right.
Can I
Thank
give
you.
the commission a little bit of assurance about the CVP?
I don't know. I'm starting to have information spilling out my ears. Like the last thing that came out pushed out whatever we did at 7:05. So yeah, make sure it's worth pushing out the 7:05 information.
The boundary was established with Pat Huckery. Patrick Garner knows who she is. Pat Huckery was involved in this. Division of Fish and Wildlife has control and management of the adjacent property, and it's under her reign. So she was involved at least in the establishing of the boundary. It is a very large pool, I can tell you that. I realize in the plan you see something that's small, but it is a pretty large pool,
Okay, that's good to know. And
very
Pat's a-
large pool.
Yeah, the Pat was involved is reassuring.
And,
Okay, Ms. Powell, you're next.
and I'd like to ask John Chesia to speak next.
Good evening, if I'm all set.
Yep.
First, I think what I'd like to do is just some clarification on the table that was discussed earlier. I have it here too. I'm a professional engineer, registered professional engineer, so these are kind of like all over my desk all the time. So table CA2 for standard 6 in the DEP handbook, that's in volume 1, chapter 1. That actually is a listing of the types of BMPs that are allowed allowed to be used for discharges near or to outstanding resource waters, including vernal pools and surface water sources for public water supplies. That lists the ones that you can use that are tributary to, but it has specific listings of ones not to use near a vernal pool as a caveat within there. So if you are in a public water supply watershed for surface water supply, those pre-treatment BMPs are acceptable. The treatment BMPs are acceptable. Infiltration BMPs listed are acceptable. This is a listing of what you would use in the overall watershed, but you can't put anything in the 100 feet. So I think that's flip through the pages on that section. There's several different tables. One is for shellfish growing areas, which I would imagine you're familiar with in your location in Newbury. I'm down in Situate. We have some similar circumstances with big salt marshes and those types of things. Then there's another one for zone 2s, wellhead protection areas, cold water fisheries. That's what they're for. Relative to, the drainage swale or whatever, there is a BMP called a drainage channel, which looks pretty much like the channel that they have below the leaching area on their plan. The backyard area looks like it's more of a sheet flow type of situation, but along the edge of the septic system, it's drawn like a channel. So that would be the BMP. And I think that would need to be located outside of the 100-foot of the vernal pool. I just wanted to clarify that because I think there was some misinformation on what that table was about and what's a BMP. Anyway, so I've reviewed the plans and the report and the information that I could get offline, online and everything for the project. I have a hard copy of the plans. There's a few things I think. One, I guess the zoning board did look at the stormwater, but stormwater is within the commission's purview. I mean, the reason this whole stormwater regulations and the stormwater handbook, it's all geared around projects that file notices of intent, have buffer zone impacts. This would be that type of project. And I think that the commission would be advised and maybe should get their own review of the project rather than what the ZBA might have done. because I know when I looked through it, I found some issues that I think should be addressed relative to the project and how it's designed and its compliance with those regulations, frankly. So I guess I'll try not to talk forever because I can go on, but one of the things that's important in a drainage design is where the water goes and how the water gets to where it's going to go. And if you look at the plans, it's basically the property line is the limit, and that's all the study area that's kind of been done, with the exception of a little bit at the roadway off, that's on another parcel. It's an easement. Part of the property to the right-hand side, I don't have the plan in front of me, so I'm not able to tell you what's north, south, east, and west. But when you drive in on the right-hand side, some of that property flows in, but that's not included in the analysis. There's water that flows off the site, flows, it appears, to a couple of ponds that are on the left side of the driveway, and it flows down around sort of the wetland associated with the vernal pool. Appears to flow to some man-made ponds. I looked back on some old topographic maps, and that appears to have been done, some time ago, but not that long ago as far as this, topo maps go, maybe in the 60s or 70s, maybe even sooner. There's an increase in runoff volume. You want to make sure that there's not a flooding impact off site. And if somebody's got a pond or a culvert under a road, which likely exists here, that should be the study point, not just some sort of random edge of property thing. So there is, from my review of the calculations, an increase in the overall volume. So that could create flooding off site, which would be an impact that should be addressed and the commission should review. So there's a bunch of information that's sort of weak as far as details and things like that. There's also, if you look at the plans, there's a whole bunch of houses. All the houses have roof drains that are proposed to direct the water counter to the grades within the house or along the house in a lot of cases. The houses are up near the road and they have a driveway, and they often slope off to the back, yet the entire roof is supposed to go to the front. The roof, if you look at the plans on the zoning board website, they got a central ridge line with gutters would be front and back. How are you going to get the water to the front if it's 6 feet lower in the back than it is in the front? Doesn't make any sense. In addition, if you look at the plans, there's pretty much a low point at the end of the cul-de-sac, and there's a low point coming into the site. There's a dip. And water at the end of the cul-de-sac is directed into the underground system, but they're taking water with catch basins that's basically on the grade going downhill and saying it goes up to the other system, the underground system. They designed the storm pipes for a 25-year storm. They don't give you any information on the inlets. I don't know about up there how much it rained, but this last storm was pretty rough down here, and with all the leaves, drive down a road, how much of the water actually gets in the catch basins? I would be willing to bet that it's not the 100-year storm that they claim goes into the underground system. So the stormwater system watersheds, the water doesn't really go where it says, so they haven't demonstrated that it will or that it can. I think that's a significant thing that needs to be addressed. That's standard 2 runoff rates. I don't believe they comply with it. If you look at the design of some of their structures, I don't believe their structures comply with the DEP handbook. They get detention basins that don't appear to comply with detention basin design criteria. If you look at volume 2 of the DEP handbook, what it says on the cover is specification. So when you build a detention basin, those are the specifications. That's what you're supposed to do. I mean, I've spoken to DEP, Tom McGuire, and he said that's what they are. If it doesn't look like the detail, there's something wrong, and it should be adjusted to comply with the detail. The the soils up in the one area that they're calling for infiltration in the center of the cul-de-sac underground, if you read the soils descriptions in the sieves they've taken, and you read the DEP handbook for an infiltration trench, which is sort of similar to what's being proposed, they're not suitable. It says right in the handbook. It's too much clay, too much silt. It shouldn't be used for infiltration for that type of a system in that location, from what I gather. And they're relying on that. So that gets them their recharge, which we don't think even works based on the soils. The other recharge they get is totally confusing. They have some roof drainage systems. There's not a test pit for any of them. It's unclear if the roof drains can get to the systems. They need to have all of that information. This is what is required for a notice of intent. You don't necessarily need all of that information to get through the zoning board because you provide construction plans later. But you do need it at the Conservation Commission to get a notice of intent. You need to demonstrate that you meet all of these requirements, and they don't. The other thing, as far as recharge goes, if you look at the plans, there's a foundation drain around every house. What's the foundation drain going to do but lower the water table? How's that going to be compliant with trying to put recharge into the ground if you're taking all the water out of the ground and discharging it over to the wetland? Or in one case, I think it's discharging into the infiltration system, which is the last thing you want to do because you don't want to have a steady flow of groundwater into a system that's supposed to recharge the groundwater. You're taking up the capacity already, especially in slow soils. All of those things, I think you should have someone from your side review to make sure that all of the requirements are met. I've got a longer letter, fairly detailed. I don't need to go into all of it, but I think these are sort of major points that need to be addressed. Another one, I think, is if you look at some of the systems they got, it's like, how are you going to get there to maintain them? All of the basins need to have access. The wet pocket wetland, the emergency overflow is a catch basin. You're supposed to have an emergency spillway. You want it to flood out of the catch basin. You look at the calculations, and some of the catch basins are already overflowing in the storms, some of the storms they modeled. So there's just some inconsistencies. There's a lot of stuff there. I don't know what the zoning board review required or what they were looking for, but here they are at the commission. It's the commission's job to deal with stormwater. And I recommend that you get someone that can look at it, that's going to look at it carefully, because I don't believe that the submission that they've got complies with the DEP requirements. I'm going to stop there. I think that's enough for my report.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, so at this point, it is 9:30. We have the whole rest of the agenda to do. So I am gonna cut this all back down to size. I see Ben Osgood is back. And so I'm gonna check with Ben and see if he really does if he's sticking to requesting a vote this evening. Ben, do you still want to vote? Because you've got, I mean, personally, I can't speak for the commission, but personally, I don't see that being a great move. I think you would get a denial or you'd either get a straight denial or you would get a conditioned approval that would be counter to the plans you're presenting, because we have a laundry list that obviously, we went over while you were gone, you came back, you heard a bunch of details. We have lots of questions, and that gray, we're going to take a conservative approach to it from our perspective, meaning, we end up cutting your project off like 2 limbs. So we can keep doing a few meetings, or in a manner of speaking, we end up cutting limbs off tonight. I mean, do you have a preference? Because if you really want the vote, we can do it. I can say that it's not going to work out well.
So, it's been 6 months since we filed this application. We had trouble having the Conservation Commission even look at information that we submitted because you said, well, no, the zoning board has nothing to do with us. So we argued about that for 4 months. It's taken a month to get Ann Martin to get her review done, which, that's just what it takes. And then you allow these abutters to make a presentation for 30, 40 minutes and then tell us, yeah, we're not going to let you respond. I really don't think, oh, you're telling us we have to wait more time to respond again. Okay, let's just keep going because we've waited 6 months. We'll keep going with this process. Now, I don't know if you have the letters that I sent. Basically, Mr. Garner, his analysis is wrong. If he has a license, they ought to take it away. I mean, I went online, I can look at a Google map or the GIS map and see the watershed area, that vernal pool. It's 23.5 acres. And he's telling us that we're, altering 12, 13% of it. It's a 23.5 acre watershed to the vernal pool. And I mean, I have my analysis. I mean, I don't know if it's been distributed, if they've even taken the time to bother to look at it. But it's there. And I would put my analysis against him any day of the week. Mr. Chesia, same thing. I don't think he's ever gone in and put a gutter on a house. Well, it's been 6 months.
No, Ben, hey, everybody's being polite except you.
Right. I apologize. Or
get muted and get somebody else.
No, I will turn it over to Mr. DeShane.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do, I hear what you're saying, but you have to admit that Mr. Osgood is the only person whose reputation and experience is being questioned. So I can understand his concern.
I don't mind the concern. I get where he's coming from, but we're keeping it civil. I don't want to get into legal arguments with anyone, nor am I going to give the board legal advice on how to draft a decision on this project so that it puts, you in the best position to stop the project. I appreciate Attorney Pyle providing you that legal advice, but it's clear what the goal is here. It's not to determine whether or not this project is protective of the resource areas, but it's all been about how do we stop this project? And with all due respect, sir, we are not providing any further extensions on this. We are asking the board to close the public hearing and make a decision. The board can determine, whether they want to deny it or whether they want to approve it with conditions. That is their prerogative, but it's time for you to make that decision, sir. And we would ask you to close the public hearing. All right, well, I'm going to turn it to the board. Pete, you look ready.
I had a couple of questions. And this is actually a question to you. And I don't know if you had an opportunity to review the letter that was sent to the commission, I think the past couple of days from Hill Law. And they refer to this Exhibit B, which is the wildlife habitat evaluation, and indicating that should be submitted to the commission for review. Is this something that the commission needs to have as information?
So what I had said earlier was you fill out wildlife habitat evaluation form B when there is a direct impact to a wetland. I would say no, not to Garner, but if I understood him correctly, he disagrees with me on the premise that he is determining that his calculations prove that there is a direct impact, therefore a habitat evaluation needs to be performed. So all I can say is I asked Ben to provide data during the zoning board hearing about, because I wanted to make sure that there was not a dramatic change in the hydrology going to the vernal pool. He provided a response and data. I'm assuming he did not provide that to the Conservation Commission. This was discussed. I'm not as I said before, I'm not an engineer. I would think that Mr. Garner, at the impacts in the context of the entire contributing watershed, not just the portion of the watershed that was on the project site. I don't think that a wildlife habitat evaluation in the context of 1060 is required.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that answer.
And then Pete, while you're on the line, do you have an opinion on the applicant's request in terms of straw poll kind of stuff?
Well, you can have a straw poll, and it's up to the commission as to when they want to close a public hearing. I mean, you are the chair of this board. You determine when you close the public hearing. The applicant really doesn't tell you when to close a public hearing. They might have an opinion or want to get a project going, but if there's still information that needs to come in, or there's still discussion that needs to take place, or if there's if there's desire to seek counsel on maybe a point or two that the commission might have, I say gather your information before you make a decision. This is the time to gather information, and if we need to gather information, we need to gather information. Information is good. It's not a stalling technique. We need to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing appropriately, whatever that is.
Yep. Frank, do you want to chime in? You've been silent for a long time. I don't know if your connection got any better ever, but.
I don't really have an opinion on this at this point. I'm not able to vote on it. I think that I agree with Peter that if the commission, the voting members of the commission feel that they need more information to make a decision on this, up or down, then I would say continue the hearing until you get that information.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Daniel, what's on your mind at this point?
Well, I certainly think it would be a good idea to continue the hearing for, at least one more meeting, if for nothing else, than to try to come up with, if we do, move to issue an order, just to get some conditions talked about. For instance, Mr. Osgood volunteered that the applicant would be willing to do more buffer zone plantings. There were areas that were appropriate for that seemed to be agreeable. I think we could, work that out if we had more time.
Okay. And Benjamin.
Yeah, to reiterate my prior statements at several meetings, there's a project here. I don't think there's anybody on this commission who's ever said that there's not a project here. So I think that just like all the other commission members, I have probably 3 areas of concern. It's not really for me. I have areas of concern outside all the where we spent all the time tonight and other nights on this alternate vernal pool. I think that there's a lot of outstanding questions that we could get good answers on and better condition a project. So I'd love the opportunity to get those answers at between now and the next meeting. And I don't think anybody's, I would encourage the viewpoint that, different people are going to bring different perspectives in front of the commission. And all the commission is trying to do is best assemble all the information that's brought before us. And we rely on people like Ann, who's an impartial consultant brought in for peer review. And if we have to bring in Joe Swerka or somebody else to resolve presented differences between engineers, I mean, I think that several of us are professionals within our various professions, sorry to be redundant, but you can have gentlemanly, womanly, everything disagreements with other people as professionals. And it's good to get an unbiased opinion to come in there. There's a process. That's the process. I don't think we should rush it too much. And I'm very sensitive to the time it's taken. And I think that there's been things we could have done quicker, and there's things that could have been done quicker on the applicant's side. And there's no real point in pointing fingers at each other. So I urge civility and patience. And I said that really a long way, sorry.
So Ms. Pyle, I see your hand. So I'm going to give Ms. Pyle a moment. I'm going to give Ann a moment. I'm gonna give Doug a moment, like put the 60-second timer up kind of thing, like closing arguments real fast. And then the commission is gonna decide what to do for the evening. So go ahead. Ms.
Sure,
Thomas.
I just wanted to raise the issue with, thank you. I just wanted to raise the issue with the commission to make sure that you have the time to continue the hearing, because continuation of the hearing has to be done by permission with the applicant once you get beyond 21 days. So I don't know that you can continue the hearing. I think you have to, if they want to close tonight, I think you have to close tonight. And your recourse is to say, we want this information. We want clarification on the stormwater. We want Appendix B wildlife habitat assessment. We want you to meet your burden that this project will not have a direct impact on the certified vernal pool. And how do you respond to Mr. Gardner's water budget? Because we're going to go with that unless you say otherwise. And if you make those information requests clear and they say, no, close the hearing anyway, you have to close the hearing, but then you've papered the record with your reasons for why you can deny the project and why you can deny it for failure to provide sufficient information. To do that, you need to make the request and have them reject it. And then that can be in your decision. And that would be my advice to you, is if they have not provided that information, that's how you preserve your record. I would also say that where they have failed to provide that information.
Let's keep it tight.
Yep, I will.
Mr. Chairman, is this a question with respect to our application, or is this legal advice?
From our experts. As I was saying, you can rely on the information that you've been provided from the outside experts that the neighbors and abutters have provided to you, and that's within your discretion to do. And we stand on the papers that we've submitted. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Okay, and now Ann, and then Doug, you're after Ann.
I just turned.
I agree that the regulations, you are not in a position to continue the hearing without their consent under the Wetlands Protection Act. I think they're making a mistake. I think Ben submitted something 3 days ago, and I'm not sure how Ben thinks the commission should review materials he submitted 3 days ago. You have two options that I think you're very well aware of. You can deny the project for lack of information or for whatever reasons you deem are appropriate from the materials that were submitted. Or, as you alluded to before, approve the project with conditions that made the commission feel comfortable that the wetlands were protected. Those are the options that are before you. I'm not sure what else there is that I can say when the applicant is not inclined to allow the commission to continue to deliberate on the matter.
Yeah, and I have one question for you, and I'm sure Doug will have an answer for this too. So I've never been in a position where I had a wish to continue something against the wishes of the applicant. What legal jeopardy exactly would we be getting into? I presume it's significant, but it might be good for everybody to hear exactly what it is.
Well, I'm not a lawyer either.
Really?
Elizabeth is waving her hand. I would not suggest to you to continue the hearing without the applicant, because if you do not issue an order of conditions within 21 days, then they're just going to appeal. They're going to take it to DEP. So you might as well issue.
It becomes a functional denial if we chose to continue against their wishes. Then functionally, the meeting becomes moot. The whole thing is moot, and DEP just picks up wherever and they start over.
Yes, essentially, yes. I wouldn't advise you if the applicant.
No, I wouldn't advise you either. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just to make sure everybody knows they're on the same page. All right, and Mr. DeShane, closing from you.
Well, I'm not going to give you any legal advice, nor am I going to tell you how to structure your decision so that it puts the opponents in the best position. I will say that you do have a third option, and that would be to allow this project with reasonable conditions based on the information you have. You don't have to deny, and you certainly don't have to approve with, we require a 100-foot buffer here, and we're not going to allow this. I'd love to see your basis for that, but the commission has the option of considering all of the information that they've been presented, including the information presented by Ms. Pyle and their experts. I will let the commission know, and for the record state, that we did provide a written response to all of the letters that were submitted. So the board certainly has all the information on the drainage system, the opinions of the abutters and their counsel and their experts. You do have the information to deliberate and consider approving this project with reasonable conditions. And that's what I hope you do. But other than that, it is up to the commission at this point to decide what they want to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then back to the board. You all have heard what's in front of you. The information that would be relevant at this point is that in speaking with town council has not recommended denial outright as a choice she would like to defend. She will defend it if it comes to that, but she does not really like that. She would much prefer to see an approved project with conditions that protect the resource. And so for whatever that's worth, I think I am open to a motion.
I have a procedural question for Ann, if I may. Is that all right, Brian?
Yeah, by all means.
And I have not had any decision on this commission appealed yet. Were we to condition orders and it was appealed, is it, as you said, it's completely, sorry, maybe I'm just misremembering, it's completely de novo. So DEP will start from scratch, or will they look at all our conditions and go one by one?
Number one, they're telling you that they're saying that they're not going to allow you to continue the hearing. You don't have to vote tonight. You have to close the hearing tonight, and you have 21 days. You have 21 days.
Yeah.
So you can ponder and direct your conservation in the next 21 days, as long as in 21 days you vote and issue a decision, whatever it is. So you don't need to deliberate tonight and decide whether it's up, down, or sideways.
Hallelujah.
When I say to know, whatever you issue, or whatever it is, the department will review what you have, but they're not bound based solely on the record that you saw. They can ask for additional information. It kind of like starts the process over consideration what you think. They'll skip if there's an appeal, a site visit, they'll ask for your input. The decision you made, whatever it was, that whoever appeals will be able to talk, and the department will start their process of reviewing the file. But you do not have to make a decision tonight. All you need to do is close the hearing tonight because the applicant is refusing to continue.
And can I ask
Okay, great.
quick follow-up?
I just want to thank you for saying that, because I misunderstood what you said about the 21 days earlier. So thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful.
And you're like my new favorite person after tonight, just so you know. Incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. What is the technical definition of issue in this case?
Issue? What do you mean? Like,
as in?
You said that we had 21 days to do the orders and issue them. So does that mean postmark, like out the door?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And the 21 days starts, boy, you're really pushing me now. I gotta look at my regs to make sure. I believe the 21 days are always day one.
Okay.
Today would be day 0.
Okay.
Right.
Some of us, this guy has problems sometimes getting to town hall to sign things on time. So that's why.
This should not be a scenario where you have a problem getting there.
Yeah. So thank you very much. If anybody else, I can make a motion, but then, anybody else?
Yeah.
That's a question.
I mean, I think we should do that. I think we should close the hearing and we'll come back and vote in the future, because we obviously have some conversations to have with Lisa.
Okay, so I am going to say that before I make a motion, Daniel, Pete, Brian, let's get our calendars up and schedule a time to come back and order conditions before we make any motions. Is that allowed procedurally? All right.
I think Sam can draft them and we can read them and review them on the fly in the meeting to make sure we know what we're voting on.
Yeah. And this will close all the public comment and everything else portion of it. So it's just going to be us. There'll be a public meeting, but just us talking about the conditions.
Right, because the public has been closed out.
Yep. Okay.
We
So-
do actually, we have a hand up from the public if
Close it.
I don't, is there a second page of public now? There is. Where's the, I don't see any hands, Sam.
Close it.
Melissa Goldner.
I'll take my hand down. You didn't vote to close it, so I just, sorry.
Oh,
Her hand, the hand thing is in the light of her room and I couldn't see it. Sorry, Melissa.
If
all right.
Up to you, Brian.
Melissa, yeah, if this is sort of procedural, informational, just keeping educated, cool, let's do it. If it's gonna get circled back to anything we covered, just send us an email.
I just had it, no, it is a procedural question because we do have a petition on the street about treating the isolated land subject to flooding as a vernal pool. And I actually dropped the ball on that one on getting it to you guys before today. So if I email that, can I just get that to you and get it in before the meeting closes, or did it have to be done ahead of time?
I don't know if petitions, like, I don't know how they work in this world. Like, I don't know that petitions necessarily interact with the rules and regs on the table.
What Brian's trying to politely tell you, Melissa, is that it wouldn't matter.
Okay. Okay, well then I just want to thank you guys all for your time and consideration, and I'm disappointed that the applicant is being so stubborn about making these changes, and we hope that that we can guarantee that these valuable wetlands will be protected in the future. So thank you guys.
All right, thanks, Melissa.
We do have one more from Dan Linden.
Dan, you're killing me. Same thing, keep it procedural.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, this is quick. And I thank the commission for all the time and effort they put into this. I just want to point to the letter that I sent. There's been a lot of back and forth about whether the commission has the authority.
That's not procedural. That's not procedural. You're getting into the weeds again with content matter.
We have your letter, Dan.
Okay, there hasn't been any discussion. There's been back and forth with Ann and others about what the guidelines say and whether the guidelines are law and whatnot. So I just was a little frustrated that the law is documented in that letter and it resolves that issue. So thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Dan, I believe you're about to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I was about to find a date that Dan, you, me, and Pete can definitely reconvene in the near future, but with enough time to talk to Lisa to get all these conditions out and make sure that we all have time to sign them and issue them within 21 days. So I have my calendar up.
Okay, I was gonna say, do you want to leave that to Sam first to maybe find out what Lisa's schedule is, and then we can respond to Lisa's schedule?
I'm guessing that given what we're talking about, that Lisa's going to be available in the next 7 working days, 5 to 7 working days. So that if we were to go out a week, is that a fair assumption, Sam?
I would say that this is one that she will try very hard to make the time for.
Yeah. Pete, do you have any opinion on this?
I would say by the end of next week, if we can't find a time to meet with her, I would be genuinely shocked.
So I think the question is, Ben, we're going to close the meeting. So we're going to close the meeting. We're going to have our time, our clock running, that we have to get our stuff together. So we'll just have to do that offline, and we can do that, I think. I don't think it's going to require we might have to do a public notice if we're going to have a meeting, but that would just be a 2-day notice. So we can pick that date, at another time, and maybe circulate it through emails. People are
Okay, then let's go ahead and thank you, Pete, for ironing that out. I will move to close this public hearing.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pete. All right, roll call. Ben, roll call.
I'm sorry, I might say no because I have not opened up all our options by listing the questions I might have for the applicant were we to choose to deny it. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to vote against my own motion because I think that it's important that we list off any questions to leave ourselves an open avenue for denial if that's the way we choose to go. Because if we're closing the public hearing and we have not listed those off, then we pretty much cut ourselves off from that option.
So then do you want to instead make a formal, prior to the closing of the meeting, make a formal request to Sam of the listed items that you would not like to cut yourself off about, so that as sort of the last item in the public hearing is, asking for that?
I'm not a Rogers rules buff, so I was trying to play it safe by just saying, let's get this motion off the table. We can all go through our questions so they're on the record, and then I'll make a motion again, and we're completely safe.
Mr. Chairman, procedurally, you have a motion on the table. It's been seconded, and one member has voted. I would suggest you're to walk through that.
Yeah. That's the Rogers rules.
Yeah, it's Raj. All right.
I voted no.
Daniel? Right, you voted no. Daniel?
Oh, boy. I sort of don't really think Ben's logic there is necessarily true. I mean, I think we're free to approve, deny, whatever conditions we, so I'm going to vote yes.
Okay. Peter?
Yes.
Okay. I think also, to Ben's point, the record reflects standing questions, even though we haven't explicitly laid them out in a laundry list. So, yeah, I'm comfortable voting yes as well. So that is
Frank, don't forget.
Frank.
Doesn't he need to know
Frank,
that he's abstaining?
Yeah. Although I don't know if he's even abstaining, because that would mean he's sitting at whatever. Yeah, abstaining, sure.
Sorry.
Okay, so Sam, have fun with this one, with the emailing, and this will be fun. So yeah, we have a 21-day clock to put a postmark on an order of conditions or otherwise. Okay, so then in that case, thank you everybody for being here for 3 hours. That was fun. And we are now going to continue on with our agenda because it's 10 and we've done one thing. We have 15 more to go. And we have a 3-hour policy on this kind of stuff. So yeah, does the commission really want to keep going? You think we can knock these out? Sam, is there anything complicated coming up?
I don't think so, but I'm hesitant to say things like that because you guys tend to find questions that I don't notice in my review.
Okay.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
We kind of have to go through the agenda and
Yeah,
At least
I know.
continue.
let's get going.
All right, let's just try to keep ourselves in order. All right, next item on the agenda. Where did my agenda go?
Gregory, I'm going to read this in.
Chris Connolly at 9 43rd Street with an unassigned DEP number. Is anybody here for this project?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am here from Millennium Engineering. For the sake of keeping it short, we do not have a DEP file number. We will request a continuance.
Oh, you're my hero.
Move
Thank
to
you.
continue.
Second. Thank you, Matt.
Roll call. Benjamin,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Peter.
And Mary.
Oh, did Mary come back?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. And Peter.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Matt.
Hallelujah. Okay, Gregory Dooley, 58 Old Rowley Road, DEP 050-1230, proposed minor modification to a previously issued order of conditions.
Okay, good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. I will note that my 2 hearings after this have already asked for continuances on. So if you can just bear with me through this minor and then we can move on. So let me share my screen real quick. You guys may remember this site 58 Old Rowley Road. We were in a little while ago with a minor mod to add a water tank. And in going forward to put the building permit information together, it turns out that this was the approved plan. We needed to have 10 feet off the septic. And also in order to make everything work with construction, what we've done is a minor revision to that plan, which, sorry. Looks like I closed that plan. Give me 1 second. Should be it. All right, if you can bear with me for 1 second. Basically, we've moved the footprint over a little bit, and here it is. I apologize for that. So basically, the building squared off a little bit. It's pushed over. The deck will go just clip over the 25. Everything else stays within the 25, but all the posts for the deck will stay outside the 25. It does move it further away from the neighbor's well. That was an issue of great contention during the original permitting on the site, but we do get our 10 feet off the septics this way. And then we've configured the driveway so that we can get in to park under the structure. If you remember, this is pile supported on Old Rowley Road, and we would ask the commission to approve the minor change.
Okay, round the horn. Open season. Who wants to see something change? Or who wants to comment or question?
We do have one raised hand. It looks like Jessica McHale.
Well, I think we should do
hold
the
on.
commission first and then
Ben, what do you got?
nothing.
Dan,
No.
Mary,
Just to clarify, Tom, that structure is closer to the wetland than the previous plan?
It is closer to the wetland. So this is the, this is the original approved plan. And
So you're quite a bit closer. You're at the 25-foot line with the proposed, and
Right.
about 30
Yeah.
feet or so under the original. So
it is closer, and as I said, what we've done is the deck just clips right up to it. Basically, to get the 10 feet off the tanks and keep our front setback, we had to shift in that direction.
Yeah, normally I would say this would require an amendment to the order of conditions rather than a minor modification, because your structure and your construction is going closer to the wetland, and that's not a minor modification. But given the hour and whatever thing that the commission has been through, if the rest of the members are comfortable with it as a minor mod, then I will go ahead with that as well.
Thank you.
oh, thank you, Mary. Frank,
Yes.
Oh, all right. And Peter.
No questions.
Okay. And admittedly, I am just fried. I wouldn't know a question if it hit me in the face at this point. So yeah, if Mary's okay letting this one slide, then so am I. In that case, does anyone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think you had somebody with a hand up, if that was about this. I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, I'm fried. Thanks for keeping track of me. Who's got a hand? Where'd it go?
It was Jessica McHale. I don't know if she still has a comment or not. She's muted with her audio off.
Was this re-notified to abutters?
No, it was a minor, but there really was one abutter who had a lot of concerns during permitting, and it was about the location with respect to his well, which is in an
Right.
easement.
Yep.
And he's actually very much in favor of this because we're moving it further away from his well.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
I'm guessing that might have been a holdover hand raised from your prior hearing. There were so many people on. So.
All right. Well, then, not seeing any more hands, not hearing any more unmuted people. Let's go back. Anybody want to put a motion on the table?
Motion.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All right. Roll call. Benjamin.
Abstain.
Dan.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes.
Thank you very much. And the next two I've asked for continuance, and then anything else that has my name on it, I ask for continuance because I'm leaving. So.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah,
Night.
thank you very
Thanks,
much, guys. Have a good night.
All right. Well, then let's run through these. So the next is Gerald Tandetti at 7 Hutchins Way, DEP 050-1370. A notice of intent to replace an existing single-family home with a new home elevated on pilings. Continued from October 19th. Sam, is this one of his?
Yep.
Okay. So
Make a motion to continue.
Beautiful.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Ben.
Yep.
Dan.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
And Peter.
Yes.
Okay. And then David Manty, 0 Pine Island Road, Lot 5, DEP number 050-1330. A continued NOI to construct a dock, pier, ramp, and floating dock within Salt Marsh Resource Area and ACEC. Continued from October the 5th. We have a request continued from Tom.
Move to continue.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Roll call vote. Ben.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
And Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. All right, next up, we have Emily Corbato at 5 Melody Lane, an RDA to install a 18 kilowatt standby generator anchored to a concrete base, continued from October the 19th. Who's on this one?
I see Ms. Corbato.
Oh.
She's
Hi.
muted.
You're muted.
If you go to on your screen, Ms. Corbato, to the lower left, there's a little microphone button. And if you click on that, it'll unmute yourself.
I think it looks like a telephone.
Oh, still muted.
No.
No. Can you unmute her as the host, Sam?
I can ask her
There.
to. She should have a notification.
Not yet. No.
Lower left-hand
What?
corner of your screen.
Yeah.
She has to touch the
So if you-
trackpad. If you're on a laptop or using a mouse, you have to activate it in the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, and before you gotta get the mouse or the cursor down on the bottom of the Zoom screen, and it brings up a bunch of pictures. There's a raised hand, there's a share screen, chat, participants.
It's okay.
That's
Take your
okay. We
time.
can do it without you. That's all right.
Sam, can you mute yourself? Do you have her phone number?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, can you give her a call and we'll just roll on without you and we'll come back to this and you can walk her through it.
Okay.
Is that okay, Ms. Corvado? If she gives you a call and helps you walk through it?
Unmute.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
No, that was me calling you. Sorry.
Yep, we got it.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Oh. No, I know how to do that. It didn't work. Okay, what would you like?
Emily, is anyone from Morrill here with you?
No, I've been sitting, no, he did not. Okay. And there's an error. I think I mentioned it earlier. I'm not getting an 18K, I'm getting a 10K.
Okay.
Okay.
Contract says, I mean, if you want to see it, you could see it. I could find it.
Okay. So
yeah.
then what we'll do.
No, the 18's much more.
Presumably seen everything. Sam, you've been on the site, you've seen the paperwork. Why don't you tell us about this project? Because you know what we'll want to know.
So they are, Ben, can you bring up the RDA for me?
Do I need something at this point?
No, I'm just gonna see.
Sam, you asked me to bring up the RDA. Sorry, is that what you just said?
Yeah, for 5 Melody Lane, just
Yeah,
so we
give me
can
half a moment.
see it. I'm sorry, I didn't have Dropbox pulled up before I started.
Normally what will happen, Ms. Corvado, is that we'd sort of have the you or one of your the people you've hired sort of tell us what's going on. But you know, Sam told me that you're having a little bit of trouble with getting, and so in this case, Sam knows what's going on.
Hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, you're coming through great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we figured, you know, in the spirit of staying on track, Sam can tell us the things that we need to know, and then we can get you your generator.
That would be good. And is there anything I'm answering on this?
Let's find out. Sam, what do we need to know?
And Sam, would you like the WPA form or the plan?
The plan.
PDF.
The plan, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have to. Oh, that's right. They sent it in.
Oh, did I share the wrong thing? I apologize. I have too many things up.
So just to kind of go over it real quick. So basically what they're doing is they're proposing to install the 10 kilowatt generator on a concrete pad. I believe the concrete pad was proposed to be 4 inches thick, and it was 30 inches by 50 inches. And then the generator itself was going to be raised up 2 feet. And as you can kind of see the little square there, where it's located in comparison to the house. And I believe that it is sand underneath there, right? At the moment, Emily?
Yeah.
It is sand, yep. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward overall.
Yes, it is.
Can I make a motion that we issue a negative determination of applicability?
What does that mean?
That means
good.
You get your generator.
Is it a yes or a no?
It's counterintuitive. It's good though. It says negative, but it's good.
Second.
All right, we have a first and second on the table. Roll call vote. Ben?
Oh, I'm done?
Yes.
After all that, yeah, you could give me the fastest thing. Ben voted yes, right?
Oh.
I was just gonna tell Ms. Corvado, let us vote, and then Sam's gonna tell you something, and then you're done.
I can have my dinner now. Okay.
Yes, I vote yes.
Okay, Dan.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
And I'm also going to vote yes. So thank you for sitting through that crazy
So Emily,
thing.
what's going to happen now is that now that they've issued a negative determination, that means that you're all set. That means that it's not applicable, the WPA is not applicable. So you're all set to do the generator installation after you get the paperwork from me. So once I get all the signatures, and it's gonna take a little while, so bear with me for a little bit because I have to get the signatures from everybody. But once I get the signatures, I'll give you a call and let you know that it's all ready to be picked up, and then you'll be good to go.
And that'll come to me and then they could start working.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good
Sorry
luck.
we kept you from-
okay. Thank you. This has
Thank
been
you,
a
Mr. Amato.
education and live TV. A semi soap opera. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay.
Okay, so after we are on to DeRosa Environmental Consulting, Inc., Parker River Research Station, an RDA to install a single temporary research station for academic purposes within salt marsh along the Parker River, continued from October 19th. Who do we have for this one?
Yes, this is Evan from DeRosa Environmental. I'm here with the applicant, Ethia Forbridge, as well, so she can help to answer any questions that you may have. I'll try to keep this short and sweet, but from the last hearing, you guys had a couple of questions about materials and methods. I sent some supplemental information to you all on October 25th. I can share that pictures with you. Oh,
I beat you. Sorry, Evan.
That's okay. I thought the pictures were the most helpful, but again, it's all for scientific research purposes. 5 years temporary research station. If you have questions.
Okay, yeah, let's go around. Ben, let's start with you.
I mean, I really, yeah, I don't know that I have any questions. I think there were still, I want to hear what Mary's take on the NOI versus RDA, because I thought it's good to have the supplemental information, but I thought that the way we had left this was that Evan was going to come back to us with a determination about whether the applicant was considering the NOI or not. But maybe my memory is failing me here. Is that where we left it?
Kind of. I think we wanted to stick with the RDA for now, just to see if you thought with this extra information that you guys thought that it would still be okay as an RDA, seeing as that it is very minimal impact.
I'm gonna wait to say anything or see what my opinion is after I hear the folks who are most concerned about the NOI versus RDA issue speak.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Daniel?
I don't really have much. I just think that the planks getting out there, that was kind of an area of concern for me. I don't really have that concern anymore. A 10-inch wide board, you know, a foot in the air is not going to have much impact, particularly if they're going to be removed. I don't know if the actual scientific equipment platform could be, I mean, it looks like it's not that big of an impact to me, so I'm all done.
Okay, Frank?
Yeah, I agree. I don't have any questions on this one. It seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, Mary?
Sorry, Mike, I'm having trouble with my connection tonight a little bit. So it looks like it's coming out, the access is coming out at the end of every season. Is that correct?
Yes.
The boards are coming out, the posts are staying in.
Okay. And is there light that's able to get into this thing underneath? I mean, how long has that been, the one that's in the photo, how long was that in place for? You know?
Inca knows how long it's been in place for, but something to clarify for you guys too. This is a typhus site. It's not the salt marsh grass, so it's like more cattails. So it's going to look like this. So the vegetation will definitely be able to grow around it.
Ah, okay. All right, then I feel a lot better about it. Okay.
Okay. And
So
then Pete,
this is being put in a cattail marsh. So it's a brackish
Yeah.
marsh. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I've spent a fair amount of time in that part of the marsh, and I'd agree that if the commission cares, my assessment would be it's going to be a lot closer to looking like this vegetation than lower high salt.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a
Exactly.
lot hardier plant, and it's also much less likely that people are going to want to walk through it to get to anywhere.
It's not fun walking through.
No. Okay, thank you.
Pete.
All set.
Okay. I have a handful of questions. So what is the length of the season? Like May 15th,
the research
October
season?
15th? Yeah.
We can condition that, Brian, maybe. That'd
Right,
be
but
out by a
just from their
certain date,
perspective, when would that be?
by December 1st or something.
Inka, would that work with your research if the planks be taken out by December 1st?
Yes, I was just going. Yes.
Can you
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I mean, what I was envisioning as a season is pretty much the growing season of the vegetation. So have access basically from something like April to basically now, mid-November,
Yeah, November 30th,
the latest. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So April 15th to November 15th, does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay, and then what is the footprint of the research station? I see the boards for the access, you know, the corner posts are 4x4, right? But what is the actual footprint of the installation?
So you mean the area of the platform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe
if you can show that picture, the first picture that I have that shows it. Yeah, that the area here, Inka, of where this 4-foot tall platform is. Do you know how
So would
wide?
you call them like 4x4, maybe 5x5?
I think it's roughly 2 meter by 2 meters. It's probably a bit less than 2 meter on the side.
Okay. Okay. So the reason I'm bringing this up for the commission is that I had a conversation with Sam today where we got into the compare contrast of this versus the Manti dock that we've been conversing about. And, you know, what are the functional differences that make this an orange to the Manti dock apple? You know, and so the point of my questioning is to sort of establish that this really is a smaller feature that we would be permitting to go in without asking for letters from all of the various state agencies, that we would be, you know, allowing a temporary structure with calendar restrictions as opposed to, you know, the more permanent replaceable, you know, installation of the Manti dock. So just with that being said, does that sort of bring any other questions to mind on the part of the commission?
I had been comparing them both in my mind as well, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I think there's some differences in the sites and the vegetation. I think if we can, the fact this is temporary makes a difference. If you can remove the access board when you come and go, you know, that would make it less attractive, at least the one, you know, closest to the shore, so that doesn't stay and provide an access point. That would be helpful. But I think, you know, because of the research purpose, because of the because of the size and of the structure and its temporary nature, and because of the actual vegetation that it's located in. Those are, they're different in my mind.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on that thought?
I do worry about precedents, setting precedents that affect existing and future.
Right. And you know what the precedent is for, Frank, right? Like if this is an apple and the other one's an orange, you know, then how are they different? And to Mary's point, you know, the vegetation, you know, to my point, the scale, Mary's idea about sort of pulling in the access and putting it back out every time you go visit it, you know, helps maintain the low footprint. Yeah, there's a lot more ability to reduce impacts and and really keep it you know, light. But you're right, that's exactly what I was thinking.
And then
we should also, you would also, you know, condition it, if it is an RDA, that it be removed entirely, all the structure within whatever the time frame needs to be, 5 years or whatever. I don't think we need to set a timetable for it.
yeah, that's the, I was about to ask Inka and Evan if I'm trying to recall from the original application, was this for a 3-year study, a 5-year study?
The 5-year study.
Yeah.
Mary, do you think there's any value in you know, after 2 to 3 years, moving the location of the research platform?
No, we could say the RDA is valid for 3 years and it can be renewed if there aren't any impacts, you know, associated with the structure or something like that.
Because that to me is one of the key differences, is that we're talking about a temporary project versus a permanent, permanent structure.
Yep.
So I think that'd be a worthwhile condition to have.
Are we approving this for an institution that isn't subject to Inca, her involvement? Because my concern is if something changes in her employment, or does that affect the study and the duration of it, or who's responsible for taking it down in the event that she's no longer involved in the study?
Is it Parker River Research Station?
It's Marine Biological Laboratories.
Yep.
Okay.
Inka, could you just let us know what are you a graduate student, a postdoctoral researcher? How would this work?
So I'm a research scientist at MBL, so that gives me faculty status. So in the unlikely event, though, that I should leave MBL, I have co-PIs on the project who stay at MBL, and they will take over.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the detail on the access from a boat? How are you, is the plank just sort of end and you go out at high tide and that's it?
That's basically it, yeah.
Okay, so there's no other ladder, you won't be accessing it at a lower, it's always going to be high tide.
Mid to high tide, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could add that condition. I'm also wondering if it's possible to specify that the planks, if they're 10 inches wide, have to be 15 inches off the deck. And the platform, if that conforms to the 1.5 to 1 that we're looking for typically.
That's going to be a stretch if it's 2 meters wide. I mean, it's possible. But yeah, this is possible.
It's how high.
And remember, it's the cattail vegetation too. It's not.
Yeah, that's the other part about it. Yeah, thank you, Evan.
So this isn't salt marsh, it's,
It's a brackish salt marsh, so it doesn't have the spartina vegetation that's
okay.
shown in this photo that Ben has up. It's more the cattails that's in this photo. Yes, thank you.
I don't have any
Well,
questions.
I think I agree with Mary. I think it's different enough. I'm a little bit worried that, we just came up with half a dozen conditions. That's going to be kind of hard to fit onto a determination. But other than that, I do think this is a different enough creature that we can, treat it differently.
And we'd be happy to, give reports at the end of each year too, or whatever information that you guys want. And we can do check-ins.
Yeah, or maybe just, instead of a report, just do pictures of
Yeah,
of the site on takeout. And then when you bring the kit back out in the spring, you take a picture of the place where it was and the place where it's going to be, and whether they're the same or different, so that we can see the impact has really been, as light as we are expecting it to be.
Brian, I think that they're proposing that the main research stations stay there over the winter.
Yeah, the research station itself is staying year round.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, 2F.
I'm losing it.
No, it's okay, man.
It's been a long night.
Yeah. And Evan, I apologize for not including PI and research scientists in the list of possibilities for you. Is there any other conditions that we want to throw on this thing?
I
You want me
think
to
that's a lot.
list them off?
Oh, did you write them down? I was going to go from memory. Please do, Mary.
Yeah. So I had, the planks need to be, this was Dan, 15 inches off the ground. Is that right? Did I get that right, Dan?
Just to maintain the 1.5 to 1.
Yep, to maintain 1.5 to 1 width to height. Height to width. The planks closest to shore to be removed upon every exit from the site. Reports with photos at the end of each growing season. The access to the research platform is taken down by November 15th of each year and not reinstalled until April 15th. And that the entire research station be removed after 5 years.
Are we doing the 3-year checkup and potential move of station?
Well, I think if we have monitoring reports, which I didn't include, that's another condition, monitoring reports at the end of each year with photos, then we can make a decision as to whether additional conditions are needed or movement of the station is warranted. Okay. That's more conditions than we usually do for an RDA. So I go either way on this one.
Well, at this point, would somebody like to make a motion to perhaps approve the RDA as conditioned the way Mary repeated it, or perhaps to refrain from that and instead make a motion that you'd like to see it as an NLI?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve with conditions as stated.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call. Ben?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
And Peter?
Yes.
Okay, I'll also vote in the affirmative. Okay,
Okay,
so that's
thank
taken.
And completely non-jurisdictional, but Inca, if you could do me the favor of asking the folks who drive your boats for MBL in the marsh to drive slowly, especially near other people's places, because I work on the river and get annual complaints about it. So it'd be great to have that happen. I appreciate that.
I will do so.
Thank you very much.
We try to do that anyway, but yeah, I will repeat that definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, you guys. Hopefully you're not up too late.
We already are, but thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right, last one. Barry Kaplan, 5 Davoli Way, DEP 050-1366, to continue to NOI to raise an existing single-family house and construct a new one on pilings. Existing native trees will be moved or replaced, and beach grass will remain, continued from October 5th. Who is covering this one?
Mike Seacamp.
Hey, you guys are still alive.
We're still alive. Still
And
awake.
Atlanta's going to win the World Series.
So in answer to your question that I did not have a chance to answer, Barry, yes, it's going to be after 8:30 that your hearing is going to be on.
Good to know.
Just in case that wasn't
Yeah.
blatantly obvious at this point.
Well, I give you guys a lot of credit for hanging in there and not continuing us as well.
Yeah, right. So for the record, I'm Michael Seacamp Environmental, and I'm here representing Mr. Kaplan. We were last before the commission in person on, I think it was October 5th. And the commission had, I think, 2 major concerns about the proposed project. I don't know, Sam, do you have the current iteration of our horizontal view?
Yes, they are in the Dropbox, Ben, if you want to bring those up.
Because I can share my screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
or yeah, Mike, if you want to share it. But those did get included in the, so that was with the.
Okay, here we go. Yeah.
and everything.
Let me see if I can expand this. Here we go. Okay. So originally we had a breakaway room suspended under the supports of the new structure. And originally that was partially within the flood zone, the AE flood zone, which is 13. And so what we've done is we raised the whole thing so that now we are 3.5 feet above the mean grade, which is certainly more than the 2 feet that's required. And we are above the flood elevation, which is 13. So now this is where the bottom of the breakaway room is going to be. And we were able to do that by raising the whole structure 2 feet, and we're still within the allowed height of a building on Plum Island. So the lowest structural member is at 21 feet now. So that takes care, I believe, of one concern, and that was about the breakaway room being within the floodplain. And then the other concern was the type of pilings that we were showing, which were concrete supports. And now we are proposing, and it's written on here, wood pilings for the supports. And they are going to be driven in just the way a steel piling would be driven in. They won't be excavated out and placed in there and then added to for the supports. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have regarding that.
All right, thank you, Mike. Let's go around the horn. Ben?
None at this moment.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I think this, addresses all my concerns, and I will say that I think if you are the so-called breakaway wall room is above the flood, you don't need to do breakaway walls anymore.
Okay.
Basically, I think.
Okay, that we'll take that into consideration. It probably would be up to the building inspector, but we will certainly take that into consideration.
Okay.
All right, Frank?
I wasn't able to continue on that meeting. So I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. Mary?
Good changes. Thank you. And blanking. Right. So Dan, is that your understanding? They only need to have what is it, 3.5 feet? That's enough. That's enough open space below the structure.
Well, I mean, my take was
As long as it's above the flood zone, then you're okay.
There's no, the as designed, sand is free to move. Also, any flood waters are free to move. That, resolve my concerns.
Yep, sounds good. And then planting is just going to be replacement of anything that's damaged during construction.
Correct. Yeah, we might have to move some of the eastern red cedars around, but that would be it. Most of the site.
Did you provide any pre-construction photos with the file?
There are, yeah.
Okay. As long as there's enough to document the existing conditions, and maybe there'll need to be more at a pre-construction meeting, which is a standard condition. Just so we understand how much vegetation is there now and what to expect, because the site should be revegetated.
Right.
To at least the condition that it's in now. Yeah.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
Can I make one more comment, if I could?
Yeah.
Mike, is there a overhead view piling plan included?
Yes. Yeah, we included that with the original notice of intent, and that doesn't change.
Well, you might make it clear that those are driven piles for the porch supports.
Yes, yeah, there definitely will be driven piles, and you can just put that in the conditions.
Okay.
And if you change the from wood to steel or something, let us know. I wouldn't think that would require a new modification, but we should keep it for the record. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, and then Peter?
Hey, thanks for doing this, guys. You got what we were trying to say, and Barry, you're going to have a higher view because you're going to be up 2 feet higher.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Okay, and then I'm good too. This was nice. Thank you. Well done. So with that, who would like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to close the public hearing and approve the project with standard special conditions for Plum Island.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call. Ben?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for waiting.
It was worth sticking around for.
Yeah.
Rest of the night.
Rest of the day off.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
So what do we have left? Where did it go? We have a certificate of compliance for 5 Perkins Way, Anthony Barbaris, DEP 050-1192. a completed wetlands replication. Sam, what's up with this?
I'm gonna leave that up to Mary because I had a conflict of interest. I couldn't do the inspection for this.
Right, yeah.
Yep, I met Patrick Seacamp, who's on the line here as well, and I'm sure has been waiting for a while as well. I met him on Friday and looked at the site. It actually looks really good. The erosion controls are still up and need to come out. And there's also the municipal boundary, Newburyport boundary goes right through the middle of this this restoration area, and they have not yet received or been before the Newburyport Conservation Commission. So in order that we don't give approval and then have them do something different, Patrick agreed to coordinate with them, and I think he probably is going to be reporting on what the conversations were with Julia Godfredson at the Newburyport Conservation Commission. So I would recommend that we let Patrick speak.
Okay.
Mary, Patrick Seacamp Environmental. Thanks for putting me on the sweet spot at the end. That was a good meeting. I appreciate
I don't know if it's that way.
Yeah.
Everybody's punching now, so ask for whatever you need.
Just to update the commission, Mary pretty much summed it up for you. We have a tentative site walk on Thursday to review the project, which is entirely within the Newburyport side of things. The mitigation area is essentially a flood control project, a flood control mitigation with some wetland mitigation thrown in. And it, as Mary said, it straddles both Newburyport and Newbury. Our Newbury order of conditions is still valid, and we will be coming. I just want to coordinate with Newburyport, so we'd like to essentially you guys to keep things open until I can make sure that any conditions or things that Newburyport wants within the floodplain mitigation is consistent with what you guys agreed to. And essentially, I think it's just going to be pull the erosion control, as Mary and I agreed, really needs to be done.
Yep, I would rather have the erosion controls pulled before issuing the certificate of compliance, because they can make a little bit of a mess doing that sometimes. So the long and short of it is, I think we need to continue the discussion on the certificate of compliance until the next meeting or a meeting after. I don't know what the timing would be. What would you like to see?
Newburyport they actually bumped their meeting tonight. So they seem to be on the same schedule as you guys. So I would say we would just go to the next meeting. I think we're going to get this wrapped up with them.
Okay.
So.
And so they're going to meet on the 16th? Or whatever
for some reason the 19th, but I think that's a Friday. So it must be the 8th.
Actually, I should know this because
but I know they were going to meet tonight. They bumped it because it's the election night. So just to keep things without having to come back and reopen the hearing with you guys, if there was some change within the floodplain mitigation area, which is really the only part of Newbury's concerns, is the actual ecological improvements out there. I would prefer to keep the two hearings going coincidentally.
Okay, thank you. So the 16th then.
And we don't need to vote on this, right? Because it's not a hearing or a meeting, it's a discussion item. So we can just come back to it next week.
Table it. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for hanging in there and giving me the time.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, well, we could say the same thing. Thanks for hanging in there and still being sensitive.
If I ever ask your opinion on a restaurant and you tell me good, I'm not going there. You just said this meeting.
I wish I got my fly tying bench out before I started the meeting tonight. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So I believe that we have one more thing I thought I saw. Nathan Gray, Cottage Road. New information regarding timeline for compliance actions. All right, Sam, bring us up to date.
So I did receive a letter from Bill Manuel, and now I have a really bad feeling that I did not put that in the Dropbox, but it might be in the enforcement orders folder. But
there.
essentially, what?
It's there.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. I thought I put it in there, but I was afraid I might not have. Anyways, so he did issue a letter. He did do a site inspection out there, I believe on towards the end of last week, and issued a letter stating that there was some work that still needed to be done on the property, but that he believes it is for the most part on the way to being in compliance with the enforcement order and getting all the restoration and everything done. He did make some comments about raking out the wood chips and removal of some of them where the wood chips are piled up a little bit deeper than in other areas. But for the most part, he has said that it is on the right path, with the understanding that it needs a little bit more work still. But
was there a time frame given for completion of the work?
he did not. I don't think there was a time frame noted in that letter. I think all that was really asked for the letter was to, kind of give his professional opinion on where the restoration stood and where he
So
believed.
nothing's actually been done. It's just the letter has been submitted.
No, a lot of work has been done out on the property. They have started, he did start some seeding and everything. Bill just noted that there was still some additional stuff that needed to be done. It kind of seems like stuff was just taken out very, very quickly, and maybe some wet mix was tossed down in some places.
Yeah. But that was done months and months and months ago, right? There's nothing new that's been done, or
that was done at the end of September.
Okay.
The complete removal of the structures and everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have a sense of what is remaining to be done?
Yeah, so I believe that it's just Bill had suggested some removal of the wood chips where they're a little bit deeper, that there was some sand that was put down that he recommended the removal of to expose the topsoil and then reseed it. So there is a little bit of material removal left that needs to be done before he can, complete the seeding to do the restoration. But I believe that was pretty much it. Was just removal of a little bit more material.
So can we do, Brian, I'm just going to make a suggestion here, just that we respond to the letter with another letter saying thank you for the information. We agree or disagree with the your summary of what needs to be done, and would require that the remaining work be completed by December 15th or some date, maybe time it for that it coincides before our first meeting in December or something like that.
Yeah, and we are still in the letter writing phase. We haven't actually issued a formal EO. Am I remembering that right?
No, they had an EO.
Yeah, a formal one was issued.
Okay, and all right, okay.
They
So
just
then
didn't
if they haven't,
provide dates or anything in the EO. So we can officially modify the EO and say, and attach this letter to it with our letter and say, the enforcement order is hereby modified to include the following additional items that are listed here in this letter, and be, that it be completed by whatever the date is before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
December 7th is, by December 6th or something, so that we can report at the December 7th meeting.
two of the four action items suggested by Mr. Manuel include reseeding with a wetland. Is that even, is there a point to that at this time of year?
Yeah, it actually likes to overwinter.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I learned
Yep.
something.
And would a modification to the enforcement order, because this stuff is all, recommended in compliance with what was requested, what was required of him in the enforcement order, is a modification like necessary?
Maybe it may not be. I don't remember what the language was specifically in the EO, so it might not be. Sometimes they get updated, as the progress goes on. Maybe you just in your letter just reference the enforcement order.
Right.
So you don't have to issue a new one.
Okay.
Yeah. Go with what Mary said is what I think.
And you said to give a deadline for completion of the rest of the work as recommended by Mr. Manuel by December 6th, and then to receive a subsequent letter from him stating that, yes, everything's been done.
Yeah, just provide documentation that this work has been complete to the commission by December 6th. And you will decide on December 7th whether to release the enforcement order.
Okay. Well then, it sounds like if nobody has anything to add to the pile, we can close out tonight and look forward to meeting again really soon, several times, probably with legal counsel.
Just a point of order for you, the deliberations on the order of conditions for the Cricket Lane project has to be done in a public meeting. So you have to do it at the next meeting. So you might be able to meet, discuss it, but you can't meet as a quorum of members, obviously, and so you have to do it at the public meeting. It's not an open discussion. You don't have to take comment from the public.
I guess, Mary, my question is, why couldn't we schedule a special meeting between now and then to do?
You can.
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying.
As long as you post it 48 hours ahead of time and you do all appropriate notification. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you're talking about doing. Okay.
And you don't even have to show up.
Yay.
That's not fair.
We got to be running out of cases she can recuse herself from. They got to be getting skinny. The longer this goes.
It was hard to stay muted that whole time, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was hard to stay unmuted the whole time too.
I make a motion to close the meeting and go to bed.
I second the motion to adjourn.
That's it. Thank you.
On a vote, I would vote yes.
And I
All
vote
right,
yes.
roll. Yeah, Ben voted yes. Dan voted yes. Frank votes yes. Peter, I think, votes yes. Mary's voting yes. I vote yes. We all vote yes.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thanks for playing.